Chapter 354. Starry Sky Projection. Next, Luo Fan revealed the purpose of gathering everyone. Naturally, Luo Fan did not gather everyone here just to let them bond. Most importantly, he wanted to tell everyone about his various plans. The great tribulation of the primordial world thousands of years later was very important. Luo Fan had already prepared for it for many years. Now that the great tribulation was approaching, Luo Fan naturally wanted to do his best to take care of everything. The great tribulation of the primordial world thousands of years later was very important. Luo Fan had already prepared for it for many years. Now that the great tribulation was approaching, Luo Fan naturally wanted to do his best to take care of everything. This time, Luo Fan did not focus on how the great tribulation would erupt thousands of years later, what the outcome might be, or how to deal with it. The focus of his explanation was on the structure of the primordial world and the extraterritorial world, as well as the way these worlds were produced. He also told everyone about the specific situation of the extraterritorial demons that he had obtained in the past few years. Although everyone present was the highest level of innate gods in the primordial world, and their cultivation realm had reached a level that other innate gods could not compare to, and because they had wandered the primordial world for tens of thousands of years, they could be considered to have seen a lot of things. However, their understanding of the formation of the extraterritorial world and the various characteristics of the extraterritorial demons was naturally far from Luo Fan's. Therefore, as Luo Fan spoke, they felt that it was an eye-opener. At the same time, they became even more vigilant. Due to the strength of the heaven and earth in the extraterritorial world, the cultivators with the highest cultivation level would at most reach the perfected immortal realm. However, the flow of time in the extraterritorial world was hundreds of millions of times faster than the primordial world. Since the creation of the various worlds until now, the extraterritorial world had hundreds of millions of times more time to grow than the primordial world. After such a long time, even though the cultivators with the highest cultivation level in the heaven and earth were only at the perfected immortal realm, the cultivators of other levels and realms were countless times more than the primordial world. When a number increased to a certain extent, it would cause a gap in quality that could not be shortened. Everyone present were innate gods with extremely high cultivation realms, so they naturally knew this fact. Therefore, after Luo Fan spoke, only now did they understand why Luo Fan cared so much about the great tribulation of the heavens and earth. Only now did they understand why Luo Fan had started plotting and setting up tens of thousands of years ago. If the outer realm has such characteristics, then it will be difficult for us to survive the great calamity in thousands of years. Taoist Sandalwood frowned. Although he was already at the half-step golden immortal realm, and had absolute confidence in defeating any heavenly devil that invaded the untainted land from the outer world, he knew that if there were as many heavenly devils as Luo Fan said, then it would be difficult for him to defeat them no matter how high his cultivation was. He might even be killed by these heavenly devils. Taoist Sandalwood, you are too pessimistic. Although there are many extraterrestrial demons, there are quite a few of us as well. Over the years, we've invited millions of innate gods here. As long as we plan well, it's not impossible to defeat them, Yusu said. However, although he said that, there was a hint of worry on his face. Obviously, he wasn't as confident as he claimed to be. As for Yuan Tong and the others, they just frowned and pondered, but didn't say anything. As for Yuan Lei, he was a loss. To him, the situation in the search cave was beyond his imagination. Every innate god here had the power to kill him with a finger, so he naturally didn't dare to be presumptuous. At this moment, he didn't hear what the others said. He was just nervously resisting the spiritual pressure from the surrounding innate gods, so it was impossible for him to react too much. Seeing everyone's reaction, Luo Fan smiled and said, "Fellow Taoists, don't worry too much. Although this great calamity is quite serious, Fan has been planning for tens of thousands of years, so I'm still confident that we can survive it. You just need to cooperate when the time comes." Luo Fan's words were very calm, but they were full of confidence, as if he had absolute confidence. When everyone heard what Luo Fan said, Their expressions didn't change much, but they all looked slightly relaxed. Although these innate gods came from different backgrounds and had different relationships with Luo Fan, they had all seen Luo Fan's abilities and knew that Luo Fan was very strong, so they had an inexplicable confidence in him. If it was someone else who said Luo Fan's words, they would definitely doubt it and think that it was just a comfort. However, when these words came from Luo Fan, the feeling was completely different. It finally allowed them to put away the slightly weakened confidence that they had previously received a blow. Fellow Taoist, benefactor, is right. Everyone said in unison. As soon as they said that, everyone looked at each other and saw agreement in each other's eyes. Obviously, they were quite happy to find that the others had the same idea as them. Hearing this, Luo Fan faintly smiled and said, "This will require a lot of help from fellow Taoists. This is all for later, but there's still a matter that I need your help in. Fellow Taoist, benefactor, please instruct us." Everyone hurriedly said solemnly. At that moment, Luo Fan's cultivation realm was at least 10,000 times higher than that of everyone present. With such a cultivation realm and such a cultivation level, he still treated everyone so calmly. This made everyone feel that they were extremely valued. They had long treated Luo Fan as a leader. At that moment, when Luo Fan had something to say, they instinctively said it as if they were talking to their superior. Luo Fan had already expected it, so he didn't care. He only smiled and said, "Although this matter isn't difficult, it's quite troublesome. However, only you guys can do it." The innate gods only looked at Luo Fan and didn't interrupt him. Obviously, they were waiting for him to continue. Luo Fan pondered for a while and said, "In the future, the Great Tribulation will spread throughout the primordial world. If there's no special method, it'll be difficult for us millions of innate gods to protect it completely. Therefore, tens of thousands of years ago, I cultivated countless star beasts. Although they're rather weak, they're superior in number. Moreover, their strength is rather complicated. With the help of some techniques, they can be combined to greatly increase the cultivation level of the person controlling them. They can also protect a part of the world. I want you guys to find 100,000 talented innate gods, and each of them will lead 1 billion star beasts to protect a part of the world." Star beasts. Immortal Sandalwood was the innate god with the highest cultivation level among everyone present, other than Luo Fan. He reacted the fastest and was also the most confident one. When Luo Fan said that, he could tell that the star beast was a creature that he had never seen before. He couldn't help but repeat it. As for the 100,000 innate gods and 1 billion star beasts, they were just numbers to him at that moment. They weren't enough to move him. Luo Fan faintly smiled and said, "That star beast is a creature that I absorbed into my world from the astral wind lightning fire layer, and changed its nature with the help of the endless star essence. It took me tens of millions of years to nurture it before it became creature." Fellow Taoist, your ability is amazing once again. Immortal Sandalwood naturally didn't think that Luo Fan was bragging. After hearing it, he completely believed it and exclaimed in admiration, "This matter shouldn't be delayed. I'll bring you guys to my world to see the star beast. After that, you can choose the innate gods to be entrusted with great responsibilities. What do you think?" Luo Fan said with a smile. "I couldn't ask for more." Everyone naturally said. "Fellow Taoist, please wait a moment," Yuan Tong said immediately after. Luo Fan knew what Yuan Tong was thinking at a glance, but he didn't stop him. He only smiled and said, "Do as you wish, fellow Taoist." Yuan Tong nodded at Luo Fan to express his gratitude and apologies, then turned to Yuan Lei and said, "Lei, wait here. This isn't something you can participate in." Yuan Lei was still under the boundless mental pressure around him, so he didn't know anything else. He naturally didn't object and just kept nodding. Yuan Tong finally relaxed and turned to Luo Fan. "I'm ashamed to love my son too much." Luo Fan smiled and said, "I'm also a young son, so I understand. Since it's settled, shall we set off?" "Of course. I'd like to see the world of fellow Taoist benefactor," everyone said. Luo Fan naturally didn't hesitate. He smiled and raised his hand. A square palace appeared out of thin air in the seeker cave. It spun above everyone's head and became tens of thousands of feet tall. It was the limitless Void Palace. The seeker cave was very mysterious. Although the Void Wuji Palace was tens of thousands of feet high, the cave abode could still accommodate it without being crowded at all. Everyone was full of admiration when they saw the treasure. After all, although these innate gods are the highest innate gods in the untainted world, with cultivation and realm that other innate gods couldn't compare to, none of them could benefit as much from Panga's origin spirit as Luo Fan did. They might have some concept of Dharma treasures and Dharma treasures, but it was only a vague idea. It was impossible for them to refine such mysterious Dharma treasures themselves. Now that they saw the treasure, they naturally knew it was extraordinary. How could they not be surprised and admire it? Fellow Taoists, please. Luo Fan smiled. Everyone returned the greeting. With a shake of their bodies, they directly rushed through the door of the square palace. When Yuan Tong and Yuan Shi entered the door, Luo Fan also entered the door with a thought. The entire Void Wuji Palace was under Luo Fan's absolute control. He only needed a thought to enter the door, and after entering, it was no longer a strange hall, but a complete spirit kiliocosm. Moreover, it wasn't on the continent of the spirit kiliocosm, but in the depths of the starry sky. When Luo Fan entered the lesser kiliocosm next, Taoist Master Sandalwood and the others looked calm, but their eyes were filled with shock as they looked at the boundless cosmic void in front of them. Although everyone was gathered here, there was not the slightest sound, not even the slightest movement. It looked like they were made of clay or wood. Luo Fan couldn't help but smile when he saw everyone's reaction. He had been managing this spirit kiliocosm for tens of millions of years. It could be said that the amount of effort he had spent on this spirit kiliocosm had reached a shocking level. Under such circumstances, seeing that his own spirit kiliocosm could shock the other innate gods, although it couldn't make him forget himself, at least he couldn't suppress his pride. After a long while, Spiritual Master Tanmu let out a long breath and sighed. Back then, I actually dared to attack fellow Taoist. I was truly bold. Fellow Taoist has such great power. As long as you use it a little, I'm afraid I would have already turned into dust. After Spiritual Master Tanmu woke up, the others didn't take too long to wake up. Not long after, they also woke up. Hearing Spiritual Master Tanmu's words, they all felt sad, but at the same time, they felt incomparably lucky. Only Fun Tian's face flashed with an expression of empathy. It was obvious that seeing such a vast and mysterious world, they were all extremely shocked. Fun Tian even recalled that he had attacked Luo Fan before, but he felt the same lingering fear as Spiritual Master Tanmu. Seeing everyone's expressions, Luo Fan smiled and said, "Fellow Taoists, look over there. That's where the star beasts are gathered." He did not respond to Spiritual Master Tanmu's sigh. That was unnecessary. Everyone present was an innate god with high cultivation levels. There was no point in being polite, and it would only be a waste of time. As Luo Fan spoke, he raised his hand and pointed at a starry sky in the distance. Everyone followed Luo Fan's gaze and saw that the starry sky was very ordinary. It was no different from the other starry skies. Without waiting for them to ask, Luo Fan said, "This starry sky is the projection of the endless starry sky of the primordial world. It is filled with real star essence chi. Those star beasts were also born from bathing in the real star essence chi. At this moment, they are almost natural living beings, and their range of activity is extremely wide. Fellow Taoists, please follow me." When everyone heard that, they were slightly shocked. Although these innate gods were experienced and knowledgeable, they could only think about opening up a world in their minds. They could not really put it into practice. This was partly because they did not know how to open up a magic art. More importantly, it was because of their ideas and the Dharma access they cultivated. Therefore, after coming to this world, they felt an endless shock. They only felt that Luo Fan's image had become extremely tall, and Luo Fan's cultivation levels seemed to be countless times higher than they had imagined. That was why Spiritual Master Tanmu had said before, Under such circumstances, although they were a little confused about the rich star essence chi around them and how it was so similar to the primordial world, they only thought that it was because of Luo Fan's incredible divine sense. It was not until Luo Fan revealed this secret that they understood that this was actually a projection of the endless starry sky. It was a reflection of the real starry sky. This made them feel as if the fog had been lifted. In an instant, they felt as if another world was slowly unfolding in front of them. Opening up a world can actually use the projection of the primordial world. It seems that it's not completely impossible for me to open up a world. After Luo Fan said that, this idea took root in everyone's mind unknowingly. The main point of what Luo Fan said was not this, but the little secret revealed made everyone feel that they had gained a lot. It seemed that opening up a world was not so far away from them. Of course, this did not make them feel any less respectful toward Luo Fan. Instead, it made them feel more grateful toward Luo Fan. After all, Luo Fan was not obliged to tell them these things. At this time, telling them the mystery of this world seemed to be giving them pointers. Although Luo Fan had given them many pointers in the past, this time he was giving them pointers on how to open up a world. How great was this? To be able to easily give them pointers in this aspect was an extremely rare kindness. After everyone was shocked, their expressions did not change. However, they had already remembered Luo Fan's kindness in their hearts again. As for how they planned to repay him, it was different for each of them, but there was no need to say it now. Seeing everyone's reaction, Luo Fan's expression did not change. With a thought, the void around everyone changed rapidly, and they instantly traveled millions of miles to the starry sky. Along the way, the surrounding light and shadow did not change at all. Instead, it became clearer and more natural in front of everyone. This Lesser Thousand World was under Luo Fan's absolute control. In this Lesser Thousand World, he could be said to be omnipotent. Although this strange way of traveling was not natural, it was extremely easy for him to use. He could do it with just a thought. After a while, Luo Fan brought everyone to the starry sky. This starry sky was boundless and vast. There were tens of millions of stars in it, like a sea of stars. And in the depths of this sea of stars, there was a star-fiend continent. This star-fiend continent was extremely vast, and there were countless powerful auras rising from it, each enveloping this part of the starry sky. Within this starry sea, there were countless astral beasts roaming about, foraging, fighting, and cultivating. The entire star sea, the entire star-fiend continent, was very different from what Luo Fan had seen last time. Obviously, during the last transformation of the Void Wuji Palace, there had been great changes in these tens of millions of years of evolution, and they had obtained countless benefits. These are star beasts. They are not much weaker than innate gods. Yusu was dumbfounded as he looked at the densely packed star beasts around him, and he exclaimed, "Are those on the continent also star beasts? How can they be so powerful? And some of them are actually not much weaker than me." At this time, the ape was more concerned about the auras on the star-fiend continent. If these star beasts join us, our chances of surviving the great tribulation of heaven and earth will increase greatly. Taoist Master Sandalwood exclaimed in admiration. There were so many star beasts around that it was almost impossible to count them, and there were even billions of them. Even if there were good and bad star beasts, and some were strong and some were weak, when they gathered together, they would still be an extremely powerful force. If handled well, they would definitely play an endless role in surviving the great tribulation of heaven and earth. And the countless powerful auras emitted from the star-fiend continent were at least comparable to the auras of cultivators who had attained the Tao, or in other words, the auras of itinerant immortals. Among them, the most powerful aura had even reached the peak of the itinerant immortal realm. Although it was slightly weaker than the ape, there was a limit to the difference. Chapter 355. Star Beast Shok Magic Luo Fan called out to everyone, and then he descended onto the star-baleful continent in next to no time. After tens of millions of years of development, the star-fiend continent had given birth to countless strong martial artists. Under the influence of the surging auras of these strong martial artists, the Star Fiend continent had naturally undergone great changes. At the very least, it was very different from when Luo Fan first condensed it. Not only had its surface area increased by several times, but the astral essence and baleful aura that it had condensed had also become several times denser. At this moment, the Star Fiend continent was like a small world. There were many man-made traces on the continent, and they were filled with all kinds of vitality. There were even countless extremely magical plants that were completely condensed from the essence of the stars or the baleful aura. The place where Luo Fan and the others landed was on a small mountain peak. The choice of location was quite mysterious. It just so happened to be outside the range of all the powerful auras, but it did not cause any reaction from those powerful auras. I never thought that there would be such a huge change in these few years. Luo Fan stood there. In the blink of an eye, he had already absorbed the various changes in the Star Fiend continent into his mind. He couldn't help but sigh with emotion. However, he wasn't too surprised. After all, these star beasts had been left here by him for countless years. Such a long period of time, even if calculated in terms of yuan, was still counted in hundreds. After these star beasts were taught 81 types of magical powers by Luo Fan on that day, they had each cultivated a considerable amount of consciousness and intelligence. In such a long period of time, they only needed a flash of inspiration in a few thousand years, or even tens of thousands of years to make a slight change to the surrounding environment. Then, the Star Fiend continent would definitely have this earth-shaking change. At this moment, traces of the past could still be seen. This was because these star beasts had submitted to Luo Fan's might and did not dare to change their surroundings too much. Spiritual Master Tanmu took a deep breath and couldn't help but praise. The astral essence here is really dense. There are actually so many strange life forms here. Fellow Taoist's ability is really amazing. The astral essence was condensed by me, but these life forms evolved naturally. They weren't created by me. Luo Fan shook his head and sighed. So they're natural life forms. When everyone heard this, they were all surprised. Spiritual Master Tanmu even bent down to pull out a blue grass under his feet. He sighed as he studied it. Spiritual Master Tanmu's cultivation was at least half a step to the golden immortal realm. He was many times stronger than when Luo Fan had condensed the Star Fiend continent. Although it was impossible for him to truly understand the essence of the Star Fiend continent, because the spirit world was created by Luo Fan, it wasn't that difficult for him to clearly see the life of the continent, yet the life forms that had naturally evolved on here. Spiritual Master Tanmu's eyes shone, and his perception spread out. In the blink of an eye, he had completely seen through the essence of the grass. There seems to be a small core inside these life forms. It seems to be the blood essence of some kind of creature. Could this be the source of their creation? Spiritual Master Tanmu frowned after he saw through it. They were in the spirit world, so Luo Fan naturally didn't need to do much. The essence of the grass, including its past and future, and even the source of its creation tens of millions of years ago, flashed in his mind. After understanding it, he smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist, you're very knowledgeable. This is the astral beast's blood essence." When Luo Fan saw the source of the grass, he couldn't help but sigh at the mysteriousness of nature, even though the spirit world was created by him. From the source of the grass, he could already understand the origin of the countless living beings on the Star Fiend continent, as well as the process of their evolution. In fact, rather than saying that these living beings were naturally born from the condensation of astral energy and evil aura, it would be better to say that these living beings were the descendants of the countless astral beasts that lived on the Star Fiend continent. Astral beasts were originally born from the baptism of the astral wind, thunder, and fire essences. After countless years of transformation, they finally became a kind of life form. Since they had become living beings, they naturally had blood essence. And these astral beasts on this continent couldn't possibly coexist peacefully forever without any disputes. Once there were disagreements, there would naturally be battles. When there were battles, there would naturally be blood essence dissipating. Most of the blood essence that had dispersed had vanished without a trace, but there was still an extremely small portion that had undergone some sort of extremely profound and indescribable evolution. It had combined with the boundless, baleful chi of the stars and the surroundings, and in the end, it had transformed into plants. That was the source of the endless living beings on the star-fiend continent. It was the continuous reproduction of the living beings formed by the combination of the extremely small amount of blood essence and astral evil aura that made the entire continent seem so lively and prosperous. As for why there were so many types of living beings of the plants, it was even simpler. After all, there were many types of astral beasts, and there were many different conditions for the combination of blood essence. Naturally, there were many different types of living beings of the plants that were formed in the end. Luo Fan smiled slightly and didn't hide anything. He directly told everyone about the birth of the living beings of the plants that he knew. Although everyone came here to get to know the astral beasts so that they could have an idea in the future, it would be easier for them to explain the situation to the other innate gods. However, after entering this place, Luo Fan was not in a hurry. He just took his time as if he was on a tour and told everyone what he thought of. The reason for this was very simple. It was because the flow of time in the minor kiliocosm was 133,325 times faster than the flow of time in the primordial world. With such a fast flow of time, Luo Fan could afford to waste time. As everyone listened to Luo Fan's explanation, they felt that it was an eye-opener. Everything in this mini kiliocosm was so novel to everyone, and the mysteries behind it made everyone feel that their previous horizons were really too small. Naturally, they wouldn't urge Luo Fan to hurry up. After Luo Fan explained, he said to everyone, "Fellow Taoists, please come with me. I will take you to see the astral beast." "That's exactly what we want," everyone said hurriedly. Luo Fan nodded. With a slight thought, they moved through the void and arrived in a valley that was millions of miles away from here. In this valley, there was the astral beast that made Yuan Qi lose her composure, which was not much weaker than her. Just as everyone stopped in this valley, a cold snort suddenly sounded, and then there was an overwhelming aura that completely enveloped a radius of hundreds of miles that pressed down on everyone. Although this aura was strong, it was only at the level of the itinerant immortal realm, and it was not at its peak. Its essence was not that of an innate god. In the eyes of everyone, it was naturally not strong enough without the innate aura. Even Yuan Qi, who had lost her composure because of its power, could easily look down on this aura. Naturally, not a single person was moved by this. At this moment, a soft sound of surprise came into everyone's ears. Then, the aura stirred slightly, as if there was a wave of ecstasy. With this change, suddenly 18 mysterious halos suddenly rushed out from the depths of the valley, and in the blink of an eye, they suddenly fell in front of everyone. As the halos rotated, they turned into a rough human figure with 18 mysterious halos behind its head. As soon as the human figure appeared, it directly bowed to Luo Fan and said, "Greetings, Master." The human figure's height was no different from an ordinary person, but there were patterns on its head and face, which made it look rather strange. There was also a bestial aura around it, making it obvious that it was not a real human at first glance. Luo Fan smiled and said, "I didn't expect you to actually remember me. How dare I forget the kindness of Master's creation?" The human figure hurriedly bowed, looking rather terrified. Luo Fan said with a smile, "Get up. Let me see how your cultivation has progressed in the past tens of millions of years." "Yes, Master." The human figure bowed again, and its voice was a little excited as it immediately stood up. "Not bad, not bad. You've really done a good job to be able to comprehend 18 types of divine abilities based on the Tao I taught you and cultivate each of them to perfection." Luo Fan looked at the human figure for a while and said with a smile, "This humanoid figure was naturally one of the star beasts that lived in the valley. It was also the most powerful star beast in the entire star-fiend continent. It was also the first star beast that appeared when Luo Fan was preaching here. Back then, this star beast only comprehended one type of divine ability that Luo Fan taught, and it was only considered ordinary among all the star beasts that transformed. However, after tens of millions of years of cultivation, fighting, and searching, he had already cultivated 18 out of the 81 divine abilities that Luo Fan had passed on to him. The 81 divine abilities that Luo Fan taught back then were created for the star beasts that filled the sky. Each of them contained incredible power and had endless benefits for the star beasts' evolution. The more divine arts they collected, the more divine arts they cultivated, the stronger the star beast's essence would become, and the more its cultivation would increase. If a star beast could completely cultivate all 81 divine abilities, it would at least reach the peak of the itinerant immortal realm. This was also the reason why the divine abilities that Luo Fan created could not reach the perfected immortal realm due to the limitations of his realm. However, even with this method, after these star beasts cultivated 81 types of divine abilities, they were only missing one final step. If they could comprehend the true dispersion gate on this foundation, it would not be impossible for them to break through the itinerant immortal realm and become perfected immortal realm. This servant is ashamed that I only collected 18 divine abilities in tens of millions of years. I couldn't collect all the divine abilities that Master taught me. The star beast was very ashamed. Although this star beast's spiritual consciousness was not complete, it had cultivated divine abilities and refined its body. But after all, he had cultivated a divine ability and refined his body. Naturally, he had the foundation to perfect his spiritual sense. Coupled with its growth over tens of millions of years, it was not surprising that it had a complete spiritual consciousness. Luo Fan smiled and said, "I didn't teach you 81 divine abilities for you to collect all of them. How much you can collect will depend on your luck. You were able to collect 18 divine abilities, which is already a great opportunity." "This servant understands," the star beast said respectfully. Luo Fan nodded and turned to ask, "Do you still remember what I said when I first taught you the divine ability?" "This servant always remembers it, and my companions do not forget it all. Please instruct us, Master." The star beast hurriedly bowed and prostrated. "That's good. I told you back then that there's something for all of you star beasts to do in the future. It's almost time now, so you can start preparing," Luo Fan said lightly. "Yes." The star beast was very excited and shouted loudly. Its voice was high, like the roar of some kind of monster, shaking the valley and spreading outwards. After the star beast arrived, it did not care about perfected Taoist sandalwood and the others around Luo Fan at all. It was as if they did not exist at all. Perfected Taoist sandalwood and the others did not interrupt Luo Fan and let Luo Fan talk with the star beast. Both sides seemed to have a tacit understanding. Luo Fan was quite satisfied when he saw the star beast's performance. Although he had raised this star beast, he had not appeared for tens of millions of years. Since these star beasts had already developed a complete spiritual consciousness, it was hard to say if they would still be willing to listen to his orders. This situation was naturally for the best, lest he needed to find other ways to make them submit. He turned to perfected Taoist sandalwood and the others and asked, "Fellow Taoists, do you think this star beast can play a role?" Everyone praised Luo Fan's methods. However, perfected Taoist sandalwood said, "Although this star beast cultivation is not bad, and its divine abilities are also very mysterious, only a few star beasts can cultivate divine abilities. The other star beasts are still rather weak. No matter how strong this divine ability is, I'm afraid it will be difficult for it to play a decisive role in the great calamity." Hearing perfected Taoist sandalwood's words, Fentian, Yusu, and the others nodded in agreement. Luo Fan was not surprised when he saw this. He only smiled and said, "Fellow Taoists, there's no need to worry. You'll know after watching." Everyone was slightly surprised, but it was not too unexpected. Luo Fan had always left an almost omnipotent impression in their hearts. It was impossible for Luo Fan not to know what they were able to see. Since Luo Fan dared to show off the star beast, it meant that he had absolute confidence. Naturally, he should have a backup plan. It was normal for him to say such words, and they naturally did not feel that it was unexpected. Luo Fan turned his head and pointed at the star beast, saying, "Circulate this incantation and summon 100,000 of your kind to circulate this incantation." As he spoke, a ray of spiritual light shot out from his finger and entered the star beast's forehead. It directly entered the core of its soul and completely transformed into its memories. As the spiritual light transformed into memories, a mysterious and unpredictable technique suddenly appeared in the star beast's heart. The principles contained within this technique were unimaginably profound, but it was extremely simple to execute. This star beast already had a complete spiritual sense, so how could it not know that this was a rare opportunity? It did not bother to bow and thank Luo Fan. In an instant, it focused all of its attention on this technique. As he focused his mind, in an instant, an extremely obscure yet extremely obvious fluctuation slowly emanated from his body. It was like a laser that shot into the sky and entered a certain part of the starry sky. This star fiend continent was originally the center of all the star beast distribution, and it was also the holy land of all the star beasts. All the star beast clans revolve around this star fiend continent to survive. As a result, any star beast clan could be found just by looking up. This laser-like fluctuation instantly spread tens of thousands of miles away, as if it had caused some sort of inconceivable response. Following this response, the 18 circles of light behind the star beast flickered rapidly, constantly rotating and alternating, as if they were rotating, appearing gorgeous and mysterious. This change lasted for a long time. At a certain moment, the void suddenly shattered, and countless densely packed star beasts with tiger heads and leopard bodies covered in azure bone spikes appeared. In the blink of an eye, there were already 100,000 star beasts arranged above the valley. The strongest of these star beasts was only equivalent to the crossing disaster realm. The weakest was only equivalent to the core formation realm. Their cultivation levels were uneven, and they looked like a motley crew. When the star beast in front of Luo Fan saw that all the star beasts had arrived, its body flickered, and it also transformed into a tiger head and leopard body, covered in bone spikes. However, what was different from the other star beasts was that this star beast was 10 times larger than the largest of the other star beasts. Behind its head, there were 18 mysterious circles of light constantly alternating, constantly rotating, and emitting a mysterious aura. At a glance, one could tell that this star beast was different from the others. After this star beast revealed its original form, it opened its mouth and let out a roar that sounded like the sound of the great Tao. As it roared, the 100,000 star beasts responded. Gradually, they formed a strange resonance. In this resonance, 18 circles of light faintly appeared behind each star beast's head. Unlike the first star beast, the 18 circles of light that appeared behind the 100,000 star beasts' heads were relatively weak, and their stability was far inferior. It was obvious that they had been forcefully formed with the help of some strange technique, or perhaps they were just projections. When Daoist Sandalwood and the others saw this change, their mouths were wide open, and they seemed extremely shocked. However, this change did not stop there. After the circles of light behind the 100,000 star beasts' heads formed, the eyes of each star beast seemed to be a loss, but also seemed to be filled with a divine light of wisdom. Then, the frequency of all the circles of light gradually merged into one. After that, it suddenly expanded, and in the end, the circles of light behind the 100,000 star beasts' heads that represented the 18 divine abilities were completely intertwined and merged into a light screen. Light flowed in this light screen, and every bit of light seemed to contain unimaginable power and unimaginable mysteries. The leading star beast's roar became louder and louder, becoming more and more mysterious. As its roar changed, the large light screen quickly shrank, along with the 100,000 star beasts. Chapter 356. Heavenly Slaughter, Earthly Slaughter. Luo Fan raised his hand and beckoned. In a flash, the jade token appeared in his hand. After fiddling with it for a while, he handed it to perfected Daoist Sandalwood, who was next to him, and said, This token contains the 100,000 star beasts. Fellow Taoist only needs to refine it, and you'll be able to control the 100,000 star beasts at will. You'll also be able to use the divine power of the 100,000 star beasts to protect a piece of heaven and earth. As soon as the jade token was in his hand, perfected Taoist Sandalwood's expression changed slightly. He felt a vast and boundless mysterious power suddenly seeping out from the jade pendant and abruptly surged into his body, combining with his own strength. It made him feel as if his own strength had increased by more than 50%. During this process, he even felt as if he had gained 18 kinds of mysterious divine powers. He was able to unleash these 18 divine powers with just a thought. At the moment, perfected Taoist Sandalwood was already a half-step golden immortal. His cultivation base was so strong that even if all the power of the 100,000 star beasts were added together, it would not be able to compare to even 10% of his cultivation base. But at this moment, he felt that the jade token condensed by the 100,000 star beasts could increase his cultivation base by more than 50%. This was a change that was completely beyond his expectations. How could his expression not change? Marvelous! Perfected Taoist Sandalwood could not help but exclaim in admiration. He pointed casually. A circle of light rushed out of his hand and instantly enlarged, covering more than half of the Star Fiend continent in the blink of an eye. The circle of light spun slightly. As it spun, endless information continuously surged into perfected Taoist Sandalwood's mind through the circle of light. In the blink of an eye, he already had an understanding of more than half of the Star Fiend continent that was comparable to Luo Fan's. He raised his hand and beckoned. The circle of light shook slightly and quickly dissipated. After that, perfected Taoist Sandalwood turned to Luo Fan and said, "Although I've seen a lot of your mysterious power, I still can't help but admire you. It's just a small trick. It's not worth mentioning," Luo Fan said with a smile. To think that this jade medallion is able to condense 100,000 star beasts into an existence that is somewhere between a divine ability and a power to enhance the owner of this jade medallion. It's most likely not just a small trick. Just now, there are only 100,000 star beasts, and they already increased my strength by 50%. If 1,000,000,000 star beasts were to combine together, I'm afraid my strength would increase by 100 times. Although I can't say they'll definitely step into the golden immortal realm, it won't be too far off. Taoist, Sandalwood couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. The ring of light he had just unleashed was one of the 18 divine abilities that the leading star beast had cultivated. It was similar to heavenly sight and earthly hearing. After it was used, it could allow one to sense everything within a certain range. This kind of perception was different from his own perception of the surrounding environment. It was more objective, more detailed, and had a wider range of perception. Of course, the most important thing was that this kind of perception didn't exhaust his mental energy. As long as he willed it, he could use the jade token. Luo Fan smiled and said, "Although it's not strong enough, it's barely usable. Fellow Taoist, do you think this token is useful against the great tribulation of the world?" "It's useful. It's simply too useful," Taoist Sandalwood said firmly. As he spoke, he handed the jade token to the Buzhou mountain god beside him. Fantian took the jade token, and the shock in his eyes intensified. His cultivation was not comparable to Taoist Sandalwood's, but the jade token was more useful to him. The moment the jade token entered his hands, he felt that the mysterious power had at least doubled his strength. An indescribable sense of power kept stimulating his mind and will. At the same time, there was a coolness that kept him calm. With a casual point of his finger, a ring of light rushed out of his hand. It covered the land within a radius of 100 miles in front of him. As the ring of light covered the land gradually transformed. Endless star essence chi and evil chi were continuously emitted from the land. They kept distorting and changing in the void, and in the blink of an eye, more than 1,000 figures were condensed. The figures' eyes were empty and blank, and their faces were stiff. However, There was a light that was similar to the ring of light flickering on their bodies. It looked extremely mysterious. It seems like there's still energy left. At least, it can create millions of puppets. This is too suitable to deal with the endless Mahesvara, heavenly demon. Fintion could not help but exclaim in admiration. The thousands of figures that he had condensed with the star Evil Chi on the ground were all puppets. These puppets did not have any spiritual consciousness, soul, or magic power. However, they were extremely strong and had shocking destructive power. Moreover, although these puppets did not have spiritual consciousness or soul, every single one of them was under the control of the sacred power. The ring of light that was formed by the sacred power was just like the supercomputer that Luo Fan had heard of on Earth in his previous life. It controlled all the puppets and allowed them to fight like real people. Fintion could not help but exclaim in admiration. Although Fintion had also cultivated the primordial soul Tao to the peak of the true immortal stage, he had never seen such a mysterious sacred power before. Now that he had seen it, he was completely convinced. Luo Fan smiled and said, "I named this sacred power the heavenly puppets and earthly puppets. It was created for the Mahesvara heavenly demon. This star beast has only mastered it and has not perfected it. If it had perfected it, it would not need to rely on any energy. Everything in the world could be refined into a puppet. It's a pity." Fintion nodded. He could feel that there was still room for improvement in this sacred power. After hearing what Luo Fan had said, he then realized that there was actually such a huge room for improvement. He could not help but exclaim in admiration. However, he knew that the people around him were still waiting. With a wave of his hand, the ring of light trembled slightly. The thousands of puppets below suddenly trembled and dispersed. They turned back into the star Evil Chi and slowly settled down, turning back into the ground of the valley. Subsequently, he passed the jade tablet to the Buzhou mountain god. The Buzhou mountain god's reaction was not much better than Fintion's. However, he also knew that the jade tablet was extraordinary. However, he did not test the sacred power in the jade tablet. After praising it for a while, he passed it to Yu Su. In a short while, the jade tablet was in everyone's hands. It returned to Luo Fan's hands. After witnessing the sacred power of the jade tablet, everyone admired Luo Fan from the bottom of their hearts. They felt that Luo Fan's calculations were really profound. If there were 1 billion star beasts that condensed into a jade tablet, it would not be a problem for them to pass through the calamity. Seeing that everyone understood the use of the star beasts, Luo Fan raised his hand and pointed at the jade tablet. A rumbling sound, as though the sky was falling and the earth was splitting, was suddenly heard from the jade tablet. Subsequently, the jade tablet turned into a screen of light that kept expanding. When it reached the size it was before, it shook slightly and the screen of light disappeared. 100,000 star beasts with tiger heads and leopard bodies appeared. The leading star beast swayed slightly and turned back into an ordinary human figure with a face full of star patterns. Then, it let out a long roar towards the sky. The 18 halos behind the heads of the remaining 100,000 star beasts disappeared in an instant. After that, they bowed strangely to the leader of the star beasts. Their bodies swayed and disappeared into the void. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared without a trace. Well done. The skill that I passed to you just now is very important. You can choose some of your kind with good aptitude and pass it on to them. Luo Fan instructed. Your servant obeys. I will definitely not neglect Master's instructions. The star beast said in admiration. Luo Fan nodded and said, Cultivate well and wait for the summoning with a calm heart. Yes. The star beast still did not dare to raise its head. Luo Fan didn't care about it. He signaled to everyone, and with a thought, he teleported out of the Star Fiend continent. Standing in the sky above the Star Fiend continent and looking down, a vast and boundless continent was laid out below. The many powerful auras were still the same, but in everyone's eyes, it was quite different, as if it had become a treasure. On this continent, there are 129,599 star beasts that have cultivated divine abilities and taken human form, but there is still one more to reach the number of 1 yuan. However, that star beast is about to appear, and it will only take another 100,000 years for it to appear. And for the untainted world, this is only about a year, Luo Fan said calmly to everyone at this time. At this moment, Perfected Sandalwood and the others felt a mysterious aura emanating from Luo Fan. Unknowingly, they felt that their minds and thoughts had become clear, and their expressions gradually became solemn. Listening to Luo Fan's words, they felt as if there was a temperament that seemed to control everything and calculate everything. It was as if nothing in the universe could escape from the hands of this innate god in front of them. If the number of star beasts reaches 1 yuan, does that mean that there will be a huge change? Perfected Sandalwood frowned and asked. Exactly. When a number of star beasts that have cultivated remarkable abilities reaches 1 yuan, there will be endless changes. The remarkable abilities of various star beasts will fuse and evolve with each other. In the end, they will be greatly improved. When that time comes, it will be the time, Luo Fan nodded and said. I see. In other words, we only have about a year to find the 100,000 innate gods. Then we will classify these star beasts and hand them over to these innate gods? The god of Buzhou Mountain sighed and said, That's the only way. Although the star beasts condensed into jade plates can be used with just a thought, it is a powerful force after all. Without a long period of cultivation, it is absolutely difficult to use it perfectly. Hence, although there are still thousands of years before the disaster, we have to distribute the jade plates first, Luo Fan sighed and said. If that's the case, time is rather tight. Let's take action first, Perfected Sandalwood nodded and said. Although he had easily mastered the power of the jade plate and could even use the remarkable abilities within it, it was also because the jade plate was condensed from only 100,000 star beasts. The increase in his strength was rather limited. It was only 50%, which was not a big difference to him. However, if the number of star beasts increased to 1 billion, the increase in strength would be at least 100 times. The increase in strength would be at least 100 times. Even for him, if he did not train for a long period of time, it would be absolutely difficult for him to perfectly utilize it. He was already like this, let alone the other innate gods who were much weaker than him. Hence, the training time needed would be even longer. When the others heard this, they also came to a realization. They each indicated to Luo Fan that they would immediately take action. Luo Fan smiled and said, Since that's the case, I will send all of you off. As Luo Fan spoke, his thoughts moved slightly. In the blink of an eye, everyone had already disappeared without a trace. When they reappeared, they were already in the Seeking Rope Cave at the top of Buzhou Mountain. The flow of time in a minor kiliocosm was 133,325 times faster than the flow of time in the primordial world. Although everyone had been delayed in the minor kiliocosm for a long time, in the eyes of Yuan Lei, who was outside, only a short while had passed. Just as Yuan Lei accepted that his parents and seniors had left, Luo Fan and the rest had already rushed out of the palace gate of the limitless Void Palace and landed on their respective seats. Yuan Lei was still hesitating whether to go forward and greet them, but Perfected Sandalwood and the rest had already bid farewell to Luo Fan. Luo Fan returned their greetings. Before long, only Yuan Tong and Yuan Lei were left. The two of them had also bid farewell to Luo Fan. The reason why they hadn't left yet was naturally because of Yuan Lei. Later, quickly thank Uncle Luo for taking care of you, Yuan Tong said to Yuan Lei. Yuan Lei knew that they were about to part, so he naturally wouldn't be as impolite as he was when they first met. He hurriedly bowed to Luo Fan and said, Yuan Lei thanks Uncle Luo for taking care of me all these years. May Uncle Luo have an endless lifespan and live forever. Luo Fan smiled and said, No need to be so polite. Your achievements today are also due to your own hard work. Quickly get up. As he spoke, he turned around and said to Yuan Tong and Yuan Lei, Fellow Taoists, there's no need to make things difficult for the younger generation. It's just a little care. There's no need to take it too seriously. Yuan Tong and Yuan Lei were naturally grateful, but they said it wasn't just a little care, but a great favor. After saying that, they left with Yuan Lei. The place they were headed to was the space-time illusion at the foot of Buzhou Mountain. Of course, many of the innate gods in the illusion were also invited by them. Now that they were going to select 100,000 innate gods, they naturally had to contribute. Seeing that everyone had left, Luo Fan smiled faintly. He had a complete understanding of the innate deities in the space-time illusion. He knew which innate deities were strong and which were weak, which star beasts were suitable to condense jade cards, and so on. He knew all of this very well. If he wanted to be serious, he only needed to give some pointers to pick out 100,000 innate gods. But he couldn't do that. After all, these innate gods were invited by Yusu and the others from all over the Untainted Land. Their friendship with Yusu and the others was much deeper than that with Luo Fan. If Luo Fan bypassed Yusu and the others and arranged for these innate gods, Yusu and the others might not have any objections, but it would seem that Luo Fan was too domineering and did not know how to behave properly. This was also the reason why Luo Fan did not choose them. Daoist Tenmu's cultivation realm is second only to mine, and he is also very knowledgeable. He will definitely choose the right innate gods. There's no need to worry about this. Now, I'd better arrange the star beasts first. Such thoughts flashed through Luo Fan's mind. As this thought flashed through his mind, he did not hesitate. He took a step forward and disappeared from the cave residence. He directly crossed the void, passed through the space-time barrier, entered the spirit space, and reappeared in the star Evil Continent. On this star Evil Continent, there were 129,599 star beasts who had cultivated magic powers and transformed into human forms. Among these star beasts, the strongest was the star beast with the head of a tiger and the body of a leopard, with bone spurs all over its body. It had cultivated a lot of magic powers, a total of 18. The other 120,000 star beasts were not as good as it. At most, it had cultivated 15 magic powers. At the very least, it had cultivated one magic power. Luo Fan moved his mind, and the specific changes of the entire star Evil Continent were included in his perception. The types of magic powers that all the star beasts had cultivated instantly flowed into his mind, and he could perceive all of them. As expected, although there are many star beasts that have cultivated magic powers, there is still the last magic power among the 81 magic powers that not all star beasts have mastered. It seems that the 129,600 star beasts that have transformed into human forms should have cultivated the last magic power. Luo Fan thought so. He stood above the void and looked down at the entire star Evil Continent with a smile on his face, as if he had everything under control. He had once preached on this star Evil Continent, and through that preaching, he had imparted 81 magic powers. These 81 magic powers were all different, and there was a big difference in their strength. Among them, the strongest and most mysterious magic powers was the 81st magic power that he had imparted. That magic power was called Heavenly Slaughter, Earthly Slaughter. Luo Fan might have comprehended 365 massacre intents, and this Heavenly Slaughter, Earthly Slaughter, seemed rather shallow to him. However, this magic power was the strongest massacre magic power that Luo Fan had comprehended back then. It was extremely powerful, and once it was revealed, it would definitely shake the world and intimidate all the star beasts on the star Evil Continent. Luo Fan's mind moved slightly, and there were countless lights and shadows constantly flashing in his mind. In just a short moment, there were 129,600 images fixed in his mind. When these images were fixed, he smiled slightly and lifted his head to look at the void. His eyes directly crossed the void and looked at the 129,600 positions in the depths of the starry sky. These 129,600 positions were scattered all over the starry sky, and the furthest distance was probably hundreds of billions of miles away. As his vision reached the extreme space, in the blink of an eye, there were 129,600 star beasts images gradually appearing. These 129,600 star beasts corresponded to the 129,600 images that had been fixed in his mind after flickering nonstop. These were all the star beasts that Luo Fan had deduced. They were all star beasts that could possibly cultivate the heavenly slaughter, earthly slaughter, and transform within the next 100,000 years. These star beasts were of equal strength. At this moment, they seemed to feel that the situation was not right. They all stopped wandering and foraging for food. Instead, they curled up in one place and began to cultivate according to their own methods, working hard to cultivate the magic power. I didn't expect that my minor kiliacosm would also be included in the operation of the primitive heaven Tao. When Luo Fan saw this situation, his mind flashed with a flash of emotion. Chapter 357. The heavenly Tao recognizes the 9-9 compass. Luo Fan's control over the entire minor kiliacosm had already reached a level that was close to the origin. With this control, he could sense the operation of the heavenly secrets in the minor kiliacosm with just a glance. He knew the cultivation situation of the star beasts that perfected sandalwood and the others found unbelievable. However, even so, he still felt that he could not grasp it. It seemed that there were still many secrets and mysteries that he could not understand. Spiritual light constantly flashed in his mind, and all kinds of mysteries constantly flashed in his mind. After a while, Luo Fan had already grasped a trace of the vein. So that's how it is. This minor kiliacosm is attached to the primordial world, so will naturally be included in the operation of the heavenly Tao of the primordial world. Even if the space-time is completely different, it can't be changed. From the looks of it, the heavenly Tao is not only about a world. I'm afraid that even the endless outer realms are included in the heavenly Tao. This thought slowly flowed through Luo Fan's mind. In the blink of an eye, his vision changed, and he was able to look at the great calamity of the world thousands of years later from another angle. In that case, this great calamity of the world is probably just the beginning. After this great calamity, there will probably be a huge change. Luo Fan thought. As this thought flashed through his mind, the originally ethereal and invisible trajectory of the heavenly Tao that he could not grasp seemed to become clearer in front of him. However, although the trajectory of the heavenly Tao had become clearer, it was still the trajectory of the heavenly Tao after all. It contained inconceivable mysteries. No matter how clear it was, there was still a limit. What Luo Fan's eyes shone was still hazy. He still could not see through the changes in the future. He only knew that this great calamity was of great importance. If he survived it well, the future of the primordial world would be boundlessly bright. If he didn't, the future of the primordial world would change. Fine, no matter what, as long as I survive this tribulation of the world, no matter how the way of heaven operates in the future, it will be beneficial to me. I'll just let it be. This thought finally suppressed all other thoughts, allowing Luo Fan to regain clarity. Raising his eyes to look at the sky, the 129,600 star beasts were still the same as before. They were slowly and orderly, but they were emitting a kind of urgency as they cultivated. It was obvious that Luo Fan's thoughts moved, and they naturally sensed it. They knew that this change in cultivation was of great importance and related to their future. Although they didn't know the reason, they naturally felt a sense of urgency. Suddenly, Luo Fan's heart moved. In the blink of an eye, he looked in a certain direction in the void. A star beast that had mastered 18 divine abilities was constantly flickering as it rushed toward a certain star beast gathering place. That star beast was the strongest star beast on the Star Fiend continent that had already obtained the technique that Luo Fan had taught him to refine a jade token. Previously, before Luo Fan left with everyone, he had ordered the star beast to gather a billion of its kind to pass down the technique and cultivate together. In the end, they would gather into a super jade token. From the looks of it now, it wanted to gather a billion of its kind as quickly as possible to complete Luo Fan's instructions. With a glance, Luo Fan already knew what the star beast was thinking. He couldn't help but laugh. At the same time, he admired the star beast a little. The star beast had cultivated for tens of millions of years. Over such a long period of time, it had already possessed considerable intelligence. Naturally, it knew how to fight for more benefits for itself. There was naturally a reason why it didn't dare to neglect Luo Fan's instructions. But more than that, it hoped to gather its kind as soon as possible and cultivate the technique that Luo Fan had passed to it. Then, it would condense the Jade token and be ahead of the other star beasts. In the end, it would leave a deeper impression in Luo Fan's heart and obtain more benefits. Luo Fan knew that the star beast was a little selfish, but he didn't mind. This was also what he admired about the star beast. The path of Tao was long and tortuous. Even Luo Fan could only be extremely cautious and carefully explore the path of Tao, constantly trying to find the slightest chance to achieve Tao. If one didn't have the will to compete, they would be left behind no matter how talented they were. Not to mention that the star beast's talent was only average. In fact, it was much worse than Luo Fu, who had just taken form. If it didn't compete, it might even lose the slightest chance to achieve Tao. Whatever. If that's the case, I'll give you a chance. If you can grasp it, you might be able to obtain even more benefits. Such a thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind. After obtaining the grand unity fruit of ways, he could vaguely sense the indiscernible mysteries of the heavens. Because of this, he believed in fate even more. As a result, he felt something when he saw the star beast and naturally wanted to give it some benefits. This wasn't because he was overflowing with kindness. With a thought, he raised his hand and pointed. A ray of light instantly crossed the endless void and shot towards the star beast. The star beast's cultivation was only equivalent to that of an individual immortal, and because it was a post-celestial creature, it did not have the aura of an innate individual immortal, and its power was much weaker than that of an innate god. However, it had stayed in this starry sky for tens of millions of years, and its understanding of this starry sky had reached an extremely profound level. In addition, although Luo Fan and the others had only left the minor kiliocosm for a short while, due to the difference in the flow of time, several days had already passed in the minor kiliocosm. Therefore, at this moment, it was already billions of kilometers away from the star fiend continent. The ray of light that Luo Fan sent out was extremely mysterious. It was hundreds of millions of times faster than the star beast. As if it had teleported, it instantly went from where Luo Fan was to where the star beast was. It instantly fused into the star beast's body and suddenly charged into the space between the star beast's eyebrows. In an instant, the star beast was stunned. The ray of light that Luo Fan sent out wasn't something else, but a spell. It was a spell that corresponded with the countless star beasts condensed into a jade token. This spell wasn't a cultivation spell that directly increased its cultivation, nor was it a spell that allowed it to resist control. Instead, it was a spell that allowed it to enter a certain state of comprehension of the power of the star beasts after condensing the jade token. If the star beast cultivated this spell seriously, after condensing the jade token with the numerous star beasts, it would naturally maintain a trace of clarity. This trace of clarity wouldn't allow it to resist the control of the innate god who controlled the jade token, but it could allow it to sense how the innate god controlled the jade token to fight. It could sense the mysteries of heaven and earth and the truth of the universe that the innate god's power used. With this change, if the star beast could still survive after the battle, its future would definitely be limitless. It might even surpass the shackles of the star beast's body and truly become a natural creature. With a thought, the star beast understood the true meaning of this spell and understood the significance of this spell to itself. In an instant, tears streamed down its face. It knelt in the void and kowtowed in the direction where Luo Fan was, which was also the direction where the ray of light came from. Although it was kowtowing in the void, the sound of the kowtowing was loud, causing its forehead to bleed. However, it still wasn't willing to give up. When Luo Fan saw this, he couldn't help but sigh slightly. When he created this star beast tens of millions of years ago through various means, he only treated it as a tool for this great calamity of heaven and earth. However, since these star beasts had developed intelligence and spiritual consciousness, they were no longer ordinary weapons, but complete living beings. They could also develop a sense of self and seek freedom and transcendence. Looking at the current appearance of this star beast, it was obvious that the thought of seeking freedom and transcendence had been accumulating in its heart for a long time, but it had never found an opportunity. Only now did it see hope. Although he felt this way, he didn't have the thought of obtaining freedom from all the star beasts. Luo Fan's Tao heart was firm and stable. It had already reached a state where external things couldn't shake it. He could sympathize with this star beast and give it benefits, but he wouldn't change his original thoughts because of this. His sympathy for the star beast was naturally included in his words. He raised his hand and waved, dispersing his observation of the star beast. That's it. Being seen by me can be considered your fortune. How much you can benefit will depend on your fortune. Such a thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind. In an instant, the star beast sensed something. It seemed to have sensed Luo Fan's intention. It kowtowed again and stood up. It didn't even wipe the blood on its forehead and continued to walk towards the place where its fellow star beasts were gathered. After so many years of reproduction, every star beast tribe had at least 1 billion members. This most powerful star beast tribe had a terrifying number of close to 2 billion members. It was quite difficult for it to pick out a suitable billion star beasts. Luo Fan had done such a great favor for it, so it naturally had to repay him with the best work. At this time, it naturally wouldn't hesitate at all. Luo Fan raised his hand and waved. Endless star, evil chi quickly condensed in the void. In the blink of an eye, it condensed into an auspicious cloud with a radius of 30 feet under his feet. This auspicious cloud was very mysterious. It looked faintly discernible. Although it existed there, it did not give off any sense of existence. Even if there was a golden immortal cultivator on the opposite side, he would naturally ignore this auspicious cloud and Luo Fan, who was on the auspicious cloud. 100,000 years was not too long for Luo Fan. However, he decided to wait here. The process of waiting was long, but Luo Fan had countless things to do and countless magical powers to comprehend, so he didn't feel the slightest bit unbearable. He sat cross-legged, and the 1,296 words that he had obtained from the endless information from the space-time tunnel flowed slowly in his mind. These words formed a mysterious and inexplicable scripture, which contained incredible mysteries. It could even reflect the endless mysteries of the endless space-time of the primordial world. Every time Luo Fan recited it, he felt that he could obtain many mysteries that he had never understood before. He obtained a certain kind of Dharma power and the sublimation of the divine soul. Time had no meaning for Luo Fan, who was in such a state. In the blink of an eye, 80,000 years had passed. On this day, Luo Fan, who was reciting the scripture, suddenly had a whim. Suddenly, a mysterious mark condensed in his mind. In an instant, it rushed out of his body and radiated hundreds of millions of rays of brilliance, enveloping the starry sky within a radius of hundreds of millions of miles. This made the starry sky seem as if it had entered another world filled with brilliance. It seemed incomparably mysterious, incomparably dreamlike, extremely gorgeous, and touching the heart and lungs. So that's how it is. It seems that this passage of Scripture not only contains the Tao of time and space, but also the heavenly Tao. It can naturally evolve into a mysterious magical power. Luo Fan's mind instantly gave birth to such enlightenment. With this enlightenment, the billions of rays of light emitted by the imprint instantly faded, and the starry sky returned to normal. The true appearance of the imprint was thus revealed. It was a disk. It was a disk composed of 81 concentric circles that overlapped with each other. These 81 concentric circles were of different colors and thickness, and the auras they emitted were all different. They seemed to contain inconceivable mysteries. When their auras merged together, it seemed to have the ability to change the world and recreate the world. After the disk appeared, a strange sound flowed out from it. This sound was extremely mysterious, as if it was the sound of the great Tao that was naturally reflected from the great Tao. It seemed to contain all the mysteries of the world. With a thought from Luo Fan, the disk rotated slightly. A small world suddenly appeared around the disk. Under Luo Fan's control, this world only had a radius of 30 feet, but it was all-inclusive. It was as if a world was truly evolving and taking shape, and everything was naturally born from nothingness. In an instant, this world went from nothingness to completeness, and from completeness back to nothingness. In the blink of an eye, it had formed a cycle. With this 9-9 compass, these 81 mystical abilities should be able to become one. They can turn invisible and point to the great Tao. Such a thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind. The 9-9 compass was the name of the compass formed by the 81 circles of light. It contained the supreme mysteries of the 81 mystical abilities that Luo Fan had passed down to the Star Beast back then. Each circle of light represented the state when one of the mystical abilities had been raised to perfection and reached the highest realm. Each of them could be said to be existences that had evolved and sublimated the 81 mystical abilities. Moreover, due to the mysterious effect of the sutra, after the 9-9 compass was formed, it naturally connected with the 81 mystical abilities through the supreme great Tao. From then on, the 81 mystical abilities had obtained the recognition of the heavenly Tao. They had truly fused with the Star Beast, allowing the Star Beast to become a race that could truly exist in the primordial world. The Star Beast had become a race that could truly exist in the primordial world. This did not mean that the Star Beast could appear in the primordial world. Instead, from now on, if the conditions were right, the primordial world might naturally give birth to Star Beasts. And these Star Beasts would naturally possess one or several of the 81 mystical abilities. In other words, after the Star Beasts that might be born in the primordial world grew up, they did not need to cultivate. They could naturally possess one or more of the 81 mystical abilities. Moreover, these mystical abilities had an even more mysterious characteristic than the mystical abilities that countless Star Beasts cultivated. That was the mystical abilities that the naturally born Star Beasts might possess. They could continuously evolve, and as their comprehension deepened, they could finally evolve to the same level as the mystical abilities on the disc. At this moment, countless rays of enlightenment flashed through Luo Fan's eyes. In the blink of an eye, he had comprehended everything. I see. This must be the huge change that happened to the 29,600 Star Beasts that cultivated the divine ability as I expected. After a long while, Luo Fan let out a long sigh. You can even calculate my actions. Compared to the supreme great Tao, I'm still too weak. He raised his hand. The disc landed in his hand. It was inexplicably heavy, as if hundreds of millions of tons of weight was pressing down on him and injuring him. However, it did not seem to be real weight. Instead, it was a pure mental suppression. It was just like the heavy pressure of the world that his indomitable soul endured in the world of his consciousness. Luo Fan's cultivation realm was inexplicably profound. He instantly understood the mystery. He understood that the heaviness was the destiny of a race called Star Beasts. The formation of the 9-9 compass allowed the Star Beasts to truly be incorporated into the primordial heavenly Tao system. It allowed the primordial world to naturally evolve into Star Beasts. The compass naturally condensed the destiny of the entire Star Beast race. If the 9-9 compass was destroyed, the entire Star Beast race would be destroyed. They would lose the possibility of the primordial world evolving naturally. That was destiny. At the same time, that was because the 9-9 compass carried the destiny of the entire Star Beast race. Luo Fan naturally carried a portion of the might of the heavenly Tao. Destroying this geomantic compass was no simple task. At the very least, with Luo Fan's ability, if he did not unleash his strongest power and mystical abilities, he would not be able to destroy the 9-9 compass. Forget it. With the destiny of the entire Star Beast race, it can be considered a rare protective treasure. It can be considered an unexpected gain. Luo Fan smiled bitterly and raised his hand to put the compass into the universe in his sleeve. Although the universe in his sleeve was not a world, it was vast and boundless. At that moment, it contained everything. Almost all the heavenly materials and earthly treasures in the world could be found in it. In the future, just a tiny bit of it would be enough to cause cultivators to fight over and kill each other. The treasures were piled up like small mountains. After the 9-9 compass was sent in, it instantly turned and naturally arrived in the middle of the universe in his sleeve. As if it was controlling the entire space, it suddenly suppressed it, causing the universe in his sleeve to become more stable and mysterious. This change was something Luo Fan did not expect. Sensing such a change, he was slightly delighted. The depression of being schemed against by the great Tao weakened slightly. At that moment, a circle of light quickly flew towards the star-fiend continent in the boundless starry sky. His speed was so swift that it had attained an unimaginable level. In practically an instant, he traversed a distance of several tens of thousands of kilometers, and it wasn't long before he'd penetrated the barrier of the boundless star energy and baleful energy around the star-fiend continent from the incomparably distant depths of the starry sky, and he'd arrived at a certain location on the star-fiend continent. Chapter 358. Star Beasts Conjuring Tablets. The instant this circle of light landed on the star-fiend continent, the 129,600 star beasts that had already cultivated divine abilities and had taken human form all let out a huge roar towards the sky. These roars were all different. Some were high-pitched, some were low, some were sharp, some were sinister. When they combined together, they produced an aura that filled the world and repelled everything. Following that, rings of light suddenly lit up one after another in 129,600 locations. These rings of light emitted a mysterious light that affected and linked with each other. It was as if some sort of unbelievable resonance had occurred, causing the entire star-fiend continent to shake along with it. The rings of light shot up into the sky amidst the vibrations, directly condensing into a mysterious and indescribable, colorful cloud above the star-fiend continent that was like a vortex. This colorful cloud enveloped the entire star-fiend continent, becoming denser and denser and more obvious. In the end, it was like a huge, colorful sun, causing the entire star-fiend continent to be enveloped by the mysterious light it emitted. All the baleful aura that had accumulated on the entire star-fiend continent like clouds and mist was pierced through by this light. In this light, the entire star-fiend continent that had seemed rather dark for who knew how many millions of years instantly turned bright. In the center of the colorful cloud in the sky was a small circle of light. This circle of light emitted an endless aura of slaughter, as if it could annihilate the entire world. All the light around this vortex revolved around this circle of light. Under the influence of this circle of light, it constantly expanded and trembled, responding to each other. This colorful cloud was the divine ability that these 129,600 star beasts had cultivated. With such a huge number of star beasts, it was impossible for each star beast to cultivate just one divine ability. Thus, it was normal for there to be such a grand effect when they were combined together. As for the center of the vortex, it seemed to control all the light in the entire vortex. All the divine abilities were the divine ability that had just fallen from the sky and been cultivated by one of the star beasts. It was the divine ability called Heavenly Slaughter and Earthly Slaughter. Luo Fan looked at this mystic art with a hint of joy in his eyes. Just as he expected, within 100,000 years, one of the 129,600 star beasts in the depths of the starry sky had finally cultivated the 81st divine ability passed down by Luo Fan. It filled in the entire star-fiend continent with the types of mystical abilities, as well as the number of star beasts that had cultivated these mystical abilities. The last star beast looked like a young man, but his face was covered in star patterns. He was tall and gave off a murderous aura. The ring of light behind his head gave off a black luster. It trembled as if there were countless weapons flashing within it. That jet-black luster didn't seem to be the original color of the luster. Instead, it seemed like the blood-red luster had reached an unimaginable level and finally transformed. The star beast stood on top of a small mountain and roared towards the sky. His eyes were filled with battle intent. Although he had just broken through and had just cultivated a spell, the power he gave off was even more powerful than the star beast that had cultivated 18 spells. Amidst his roar, all the star beasts on the entire Starfiend continent roared towards the sky. These roars combined together. Although they seemed to be in tune, they were constantly colliding with each other, oppressing each other, as if they wanted to suppress the other roars. There were 129,600 star beasts on the Starfiend continent. Many of them were star beasts that had taken form when Luo Fan had passed down his divine ability. They had cultivated for tens of millions of years longer than the last star beast. However, the star beast's roar gradually gained the upper hand amidst the chaotic roars. It gradually suppressed the roars of the other star beasts and gradually became the leader of all the star beasts on the Starfiend continent. The roars of the other star beasts became its background. The huge cloud in the void world also gradually stabilized. The ring of light in the center became prominent, suppressing all other light and dominating all light. At this point, the roars of the star beasts gradually weakened. Meanwhile, the colorful cloud vortex formed by the 129,600 divine abilities in the void also gradually stopped and became more and more illusory. In the end, it collapsed with a loud bang, turning into countless circles of light that split into 129,600 parts. They rushed towards the Starfiend continent and returned to the original position they had rushed out from. When Luo Fan saw this, he smiled slightly. He knew that the last star beast that appeared had confirmed that he was the leader of all the star beasts and had the qualifications to control all of them. With a slight thought, a silent summon came from where he was. It instantly swept across the entire Starfiend continent and into the minds of the 129,600 star beasts on the Starfiend continent. 80,000 years had passed since he had been reciting that passage of scripture in this place. During this period of time, the star beast that cultivated 18 divine abilities and was personally taught by Luo Fan to choose 1 billion of its kind had already completed the task that Luo Fan had given it. It had even returned to the Starfiend continent tens of thousands of years ago. Therefore, there was not a single star beast missing on the Starfiend continent. It was exactly the number of 1 yuan. After Luo Fan sent out this wave of summon, he raised his hand and waved. 129,600 small clouds suddenly appeared out of thin air around his body. Like the stars surrounding and protecting him, they were arranged around him. At the same time, the auspicious cloud beneath him changed slightly. Its surface area suddenly expanded by 10 times, and its nature changed greatly as well. It was no longer illusory and undetectable like before. Instead, it was incomparably conspicuous. Even if one was millions of kilometers away, one could still see this auspicious cloud and hear any sound that Luo Fan made on this auspicious cloud. After a while, roars sounded again from the Starfiend continent. But this time, the roars were no longer filled with conflict and competition like before. Instead, they were filled with boundless excitement and boundless joy. Then, countless circles of light shot out from the Starfiend continent and headed straight for where Luo Fan was. The 129,600 auspicious clouds were about the same size. They were all 3 meters in circumference, and they were all condensed from the essence of the stars and evil energy. They contained some rather mysterious secrets. The rings of light rushed out from the Starfiend continent, but they seemed to correspond to the 129,600 auspicious clouds. There was no need for any struggle, no need for any hesitation, and they naturally landed on their respective auspicious clouds. The circles of light more or less gathered in one place and gradually changed to reveal the 129,600 figures of people. These figures were all different in height and weight. Even their ages and genders differed greatly, but their faces were covered in complicated star markings. They looked very mysterious and very strange. These were the 129,600 star beasts on the Starfiend continent. Among these star beasts, On the auspicious cloud closest to Luo Fan was the star beast that had recently appeared. It had only cultivated the heavenly slaughter and earthly massacre. The star beast that was second only to this star beast was the star beast that Luo Fan thought highly of and gave some opportunities to cultivate 18 divine powers. Further back were dozens of star beasts that had cultivated 17 divine powers. The number of star beasts decreased in succession. At the furthest point, there were ordinary star beasts that had cultivated 1 divine power. These star beasts landed on the auspicious clouds and instantly saw Luo Fan sitting cross-legged on the auspicious cloud in the center. "Greetings, Master." These star beasts didn't dare to be negligent. They immediately crawled up and knelt on the auspicious clouds. They kowtowed to Luo Fan and shouted. 129,600 voices uttered the same sentence. This feeling was truly earth-shattering, and it almost caused the entire void to tremble. Even the clouds were affected by the voice and started to sway slightly. Seeing this, Luo Fan smiled and said, "Get up. Now the time has come. It's time for you to work for me. Do you still remember what I said before? We dare not forget. If Master has any instructions, we will die for it." The 129,600 voices were exceptionally uniform. Even the star beast that had just manifested subdued all the star beasts and dominated the entire star beast race, didn't have any other unusual behavior. It was no different from the other star beasts and didn't dare to have the slightest arrogance. Luo Fan nodded and said, "In that case, all of you must remember the technique that I'm going to say next. After that, choose 1 billion people of your race and pass this technique down for future use." "Yes, Master," 129,600 voices replied. Luo Fan didn't say anything more. He directly opened his mouth and explained the technique that could condense many star beasts into jade tokens. This, however, was also a kind of preaching. As he spoke, the entire world seemed to tremble slightly. An extremely grand echo suddenly appeared. Under the brilliant heavenly might, Luo Fan's voice was like the sound of heaven and earth, the sound of the Tao. It directly imprinted into the depths of the spiritual consciousness of all the star beasts present. Even the star beasts that had already been taught by Luo Fan felt that this sound was inexplicably mysterious. It deepened its understanding of this technique once again. Although it only took Luo Fan a moment to directly imprint this technique into the depths of the star beast's spiritual consciousness, and the star beast was able to use it in a short while, people thought that this technique was crude and simple. In reality, this technique was extremely mysterious. It was a technique that Luo Fan could only create after attaining the grand unity Tao fruit. The profundities contained within it were boundless, yet Luo Fan had spent an entire year to explain the general profundities of this technique. However, this only allowed the star beasts to have a rough understanding of the technique, allowing them to use it without any deviation. It was almost impossible for them to truly understand the mysteries of this technique. If there was an exception, it would be the star beast that had been taught by Luo Fan and had this technique in the depths of its spiritual consciousness. Only it could slightly understand the mystery of this technique and slightly improve the 18 techniques that it cultivated. Although its power still couldn't suppress the heavenly slaughter technique, it narrowed the gap by a lot. After a year of preaching, Luo Fan had already explained everything that could be said about this technique. He stopped with a calm expression. Mental Time continued to recite the incantation. To him, this wasn't a burden at all. He also didn't want to waste this 1 year's time. At this moment, golden and silver light flickered in his eyes. He shone on the 129,600 star beasts and observed their respective changes. After he finished explaining this technique, the 129,600 star beasts had different reactions. Some of the star beasts' abilities flickered behind their heads, as if they were communicating with the star beasts of the same race to fuse with them. Some star beasts were still thinking hard. Obviously, they still could not figure out how to cultivate this technique. When Luo Fan saw this, he was furious at the aptitudes of the 129,600 star beasts. Although in his opinion, These star beasts were only tools to help the primordial world survive the great tribulation of heaven and earth. If their aptitudes were better, they could also help them survive the great tribulation. In addition, he was a good teacher, so he naturally had to distinguish these star beasts. It's a pity that the aptitudes of these star beasts are far inferior to Luo Fu, who had just transformed. They are indeed congenitally deficient. Luo Fan sighed in his heart, using a year's time to teach a secret art. Moreover, it was such a simple secret art. This was definitely the first time Luo Fan had ever done it. Under such circumstances, many of these star beasts were still at a loss in thinking. It was obvious that their aptitudes were extremely poor. At this moment, a roar sounded. The star beast closest to him, which had only cultivated one heavenly slaughter technique, roared. Its body rolled and turned into a three-headed dog with a sharp horn on its head. It was a sturdy, ferocious-looking star beast. After this star beast transformed into its original body, the halo behind its head trembled. As it trembled, a star beast of the same race and appearance appeared out of thin air. After the star beast appeared, a jet-black halo also appeared behind its head. With a sudden shake, its body directly merged into the halo behind its own head and then directly entered the halo behind the star beast's head. As the star beast entered, the halo seemed to expand slightly, and its color became fuller. More and more star beasts fused into the ring of light. The color of the ring of light became richer and richer, and its size grew larger and larger. Soon, there were hundreds of thousands of star beasts entering the halo behind its head. The circle of light had expanded to a radius of several tens of thousands of feet, and its width had increased to almost a circle. There was only a small gap around the star beast's body, which was almost the same size as the star beast itself. The star beast was still roaring incessantly, and the halo of light behind its head was also trembling. The void continued to shatter, and more star beasts rushed into the halo behind its head. At this moment, the star beast that Luo Fan had given special treatment to suddenly let out a long roar, and the 18 halos behind its head trembled violently. The void shattered, and 100,000 star beasts appeared out of thin air. They directly charged into the 18 halos of light, completely fusing with the 18 halos of light, causing the halos of light to instantly expand by 100 times, and the width also increased by 100 times. The halo of the star beast trembled again, and another 100,000 star beasts appeared. The 100,000 star beasts quickly caught up to the star beast that cultivated the heaven slaughter and earth slaughter. It didn't even need to transform into its original body. It could still maintain its human form. Clearly, its comprehension of this technique was much stronger than that of the star beast from before. Next, roars came one after another as more and more star beasts comprehended the spell. They tore open the void and summoned star beasts to fuse with their own spell. However, these star beasts that comprehended later didn't have the abilities of the first two star beasts. Not only did they need to transform into their original bodies, but they also couldn't directly fuse all of the star beast's divine abilities into their own divine abilities. They needed to fuse their own divine abilities with the illusory divine abilities formed by the new star beasts and gradually spread it out. It was similar to when the 18 star beasts first used that technique. Seeing this, Luo Fan smiled and didn't say anything. With a single thought, the space around him changed, and all the astral beasts around him were dispersed to a radius of several 100 million kilometers. At this distance, the distance between every two star beasts could fit at least 1 billion star beasts. There is no need to worry about the star beasts' spells interfering with each other and the star beasts having no place to put them. With this shackle gone, the star beasts let go of everything and no longer held back. They summoned more and more star beasts to cultivate the spell and fuse it into their bodies. Buzz, after a long while, a strange sound that sounded like a morning bell or evening drum suddenly rang out. That voice might be soft, but it spread across the sky and was extremely clear amidst the endless roars. Luo Fan turned to look, only to find that in the void, a palm-sized jade token had appeared in the second closest position to him. The jade token was sparkling and translucent, emitting 18 mysterious halos of light. The halos kept rotating and changing. Sometimes they condensed, sometimes they dispersed. When they condensed, it was as if everything in the world, including the universe, was evolving within them. When they dispersed, it was as if they were enveloping everything in the world. As soon as Luo Fan saw it, he knew that this jade token was condensed from 1 billion star beasts by the star beast that Luo Fan had given special treatment to, and had cultivated 18 divine abilities. This star beast had obtained that cultivation technique for tens of thousands of years and had already chosen 1 billion of its kind. At this time, it was only cultivating step by step. Its speed was so fast that it actually surpassed the star beast that had cultivated the heavenly slaughter, earthly slaughter. Chapter 359. Luo Fan raised his hand and beckoned. The jade token trembled slightly, crossed the void, and landed in his hand in the blink of an eye. The jade token's ability to improve cultivation was completely useless to Luo Fan. After all, he had already attained the primordial unity fruit of Wei, which was fundamentally different from the earthly immortal fruit of Wei. Although the combined power of 1 billion star beasts was powerful and unpredictable, the quality was too low for him, and not much of it surged out. However, even so, he could sense the profundity of the jade token. The moment the jade token entered his hand, he felt as if he had gained 1 billion more powers, and 18 more powerful and profound divine abilities. In an instant, he knew that this jade token had completely realized the function he had originally envisioned, and the star beast had already completely comprehended the profundities of the technique he had passed down. A satisfied expression flashed in his mind. After that, another few dozen days passed before the star beast that had comprehended the divine art first summoned 1 billion of its kind and completely integrated them into its divine ability, heavenly slaughter. As for itself, it charged into the divine ability and underwent a mysterious change. It also transformed into a jade tablet that was enveloped by a black halo of light. However, this jade token was different from the one in Luo Fan's hand. This jade token seemed very ordinary at first glance, and there was not much difference between it and an ordinary jade token. However, upon closer inspection, one would find that this jade token was extremely sharp, and it seemed to faintly emit some kind of mysterious slaughter intent. Luo Fan raised his hand and beckoned, and the jade token disappeared into his hand. Holding this jade token, Luo Fan could not help but smile. Although the power of this jade token was not as powerful as the other one in his hand, its lethality was greater, and it faintly possessed the power to command all star beasts. It was obviously because of the mysterious divine ability cultivated by the star beast that formed this jade token. He casually put the 2 jade tokens aside and turned his attention to the other 129,000 star beasts that were using that spell to summon their brethren. After all, those astral beasts were different from the astral beasts that had turned into jade tokens. They were not like the star beasts that Luo Fan had given them special treatment at the very beginning. They were also not as talented as the star beasts that had mastered the divine ability, heavenly slaughter, earth annihilation. After listening to Luo Fan's detailed explanation of the technique for a year, most of them had some comprehension and were barely able to start cultivating it. However, it was impossible for them to reach the heavens in a single step and completely achieve the great feat of fusing 1 billion star beasts into a jade tablet. Therefore, at this moment, although more and more jade plates were being formed. However, at most, only 1 million astral beasts could be condensed into jade pendants. Most of them could only be condensed into 100,000 or even a few 100,000 astral beasts. Apart from this, there were many star beasts who were still at a loss, not knowing what to do. Seeing this, Luo Fan knew that it would take a long time for the star beast to completely cultivate that technique and gather 1 billion of its kind to condense the jade token. Sighing, he sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes, slowly adjusting his breathing. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, Tens of thousands of years had passed. During these tens of thousands of years, Luo Fan did not move at all. His mind was filled with spiritual energy as he continued to recollect all the techniques he had cultivated in the past. He continued to polish his Tai fruit and Qi. During this process, the star beasts around him were extremely busy. Almost every star beast had half the time to leave this place and head to where their own kind was gathered to pick out the star beasts of the same kind that they had the best cooperation with. Those star beasts who had been at a loss after Luo Fan finished explaining the incantation and didn't know how to cultivate also gradually understood during this process and knew how to condense a jade token with their clansmen. After all, Luo Fan's explanation was extremely clear and they were not extremely stupid. Though their talent was poor, with the accumulation of time, they were able to understand. On this day, Luo Fan's heart skipped a beat. He abruptly stopped the process of adjusting his breath and opened his eyes to take a look. There were 129,600 jade tokens densely arranged in front of him. These 129,600 jade tokens were very mysterious. Each jade token had one or several circles of light circling around it, emitting a mysterious light. These jade tokens were formed when the 129,600 star beasts summoned 1 billion of their own kind in one place. They were also what Luo Fan planned to use to resist the great tribulation of the primeval world with the innate gods. It's finally done. It's only 10,000 years, not bad. Luo Fan smiled faintly. He raised his left hand and covered it. The 129,600 jade tokens that were densely arranged in the void in front of him disappeared instantly. They had all been put into his heaven and earth in his sleeve. 10,000 years of cultivation was not much for him. After all, at his realm, what cultivation needed was not the accumulation of time. To him, cultivating for a long time might be beneficial, but it was definitely limited. Moreover, it was only 10,000 years. To him, it was like taking a nap. It was not a long time. Naturally, it was impossible for him to make much progress. Although there were fewer star beasts in the starry sky, there were still many star beasts. Although most of them had disappeared, there were still hundreds of millions of star beasts from each race. Therefore, Luo Fan gathered so many star beasts together and took them away, but it was not considered that he had plundered all the star beasts in the spirit space. Perhaps, the next time I come, the Star Fiend continent will be filled with star beasts that have recultivated their supernatural powers. Luo Fan lowered his head and looked at the boundless but extremely empty Star Fiend continent. He sighed with emotion. He waved his hand lightly. The 129,600 auspicious clouds around him suddenly exploded, turning into specks of light that scattered in all directions. In the end, they completely integrated into the atmosphere of the Star Fiend continent and disappeared without a trace. Then, he lifted his foot and shook it lightly. The auspicious cloud under him also shook slightly and slowly dispersed. However, the method this auspicious cloud dispersed was completely different from the other 129,600 auspicious clouds. It seemed to be even slower, and, at the same time, it was even more mysterious. It seemed as if some sort of indescribably profound matter was ceaselessly condensing and producing all sorts of mysterious changes. Luo Fan moved his mind. He already knew what was going on. To have such a good fortune, it is a rare opportunity. I will fulfill your wish. Such a thought flashed in his mind. He raised his hand and patted the air. The auspicious cloud suddenly shook and stopped dispersing. Then it completely plunged down. In the blink of an eye, it plunged into the atmosphere of the Star Fiend continent below. As it plunged into the atmosphere of the entire Star Fiend continent quickly circulated as if it was boiling. In the blink of an eye, it was divided into 3 layers. The bottom layer was the thickest, more than thousands of miles thick. It was composed of ordinary Star Fiend Qi, and it was not much different from before. The middle layer was much thinner than the bottom layer. It was only a few hundred miles, but there were traces of strange things flashing, condensing, and swimming inside. The top layer, which was also the outermost layer, was the thinnest. It was less than 1,000 feet. Inside, groups of wonderful star patterns were constantly condensing, collapsing, and reforming. There was also a faint vitality emitting from it. There seemed to be a joyful emotion coming from the outermost layer of the entire atmosphere. This scene seemed to have a life of killing intent in the atmosphere. It was extremely mysterious. Seeing such a change, Luo Fan nodded with satisfaction. He turned around and took a step forward. His figure gradually disappeared from the spirit space. In fact, after the atmosphere of the Star Fiend continent merged with the auspicious cloud, it had already undergone an incredible change. Although it did not really turn into a living thing and become a real life, there was a trace of vitality and a little possibility of becoming a real living thing. The reason for such a change was the auspicious cloud that had supported Luo Fan for 90,000 years. That auspicious cloud was condensed by Luo Fan at random to hold him back. It was only the most ordinary star essence chi and star fiend chi, and there was not much mystery to it. However, it should be known that this auspicious cloud had supported him for 90,000 years. During this process, he had also recited the 1,296 characters of the scripture for 80,000 years. After that, he had preached his thoughts and meditated for 10,000 years. Even Luo Fan could not fully understand the mystery of the scripture. After being immersed in this scripture for 80,000 years, and after listening to Luo Fan's preaching for a year, this auspicious cloud finally transformed. Gradually, a faint vitality was born inside it, and there was a slight possibility of it transforming into a living thing. Luo Fan did not notice it at the beginning. He wanted to disperse this auspicious cloud, and in the process, it aroused the desire to live. It tried its best to use the Tao that Luo Fan preached, wanting to maintain itself. That was why it was discovered by Luo Fan. Luo Fan did not expect such a change, and he found it quite interesting. He also pushed the auspicious cloud to merge with the atmosphere of the entire Star Fiend continent. Through the rich nature of the atmosphere, he could protect the little bit of vitality inside the cloud and provide it with nourishment, giving it a chance to grow continuously. In the end, it might even become a real living being and form a complete spiritual consciousness. As for the result, Luo Fan did not care, so he naturally would not stay here for long. Luo Fan's figure flashed, and he appeared in the Seeking Rope Cave at the top of Buzhou Mountain. Although 90,000 years had passed in the spirit Kiliacosm, in this untainted world, only a few months had passed, or even less than a year. Coming back here again, breathing the same primordial chi as when he left, Luo Fan's face showed a slight emotion. He raised his hand and waved. The Wuji Palace in the void above him shrank and shook. Then, it turned into a stream of yellow, flowing light and rushed into the mud pill palace between his eyebrows. Then, it rushed into the world of his sea of consciousness through a mysterious location. His mind moved slightly, and he calculated a little. He already knew that in the past few months, Immortal Tan Mu, Yu Su, and the others had completed the task that he had given them. In the space-time illusion, they had found 100,000 innate gods with high cultivation realms. They had also told them clearly what he had given them. They're quite fast, but it's good. This way, I have more time to practice. Luo Fan's mind moved slightly, and such a thought flashed in his mind. Thinking of this, he did not hesitate. He took a step forward, and his figure flashed, and he disappeared in the Seeking Rope Cave. In a breath, he appeared in front of the space-time illusion at the foot of Buzhou Mountain. Seeing Luo Fan's real body, the magic treasure smiled slightly. This time, it did not hide in the void. Instead, its body shook, and it turned into a rainbow light that hit the space between Luo Fan's eyebrows. Through some mysterious connection, it rushed into his sea of consciousness. It suddenly landed next to the dark incarnation, sat cross-legged, closed its eyes, and operated the restriction in its body to carry out a sacrificial refinement in a different way. From now on, the space-time illusion was no longer necessary, and there was no need for Luo Fan to separate the magic treasure to guard here. After taking back the magic treasure, Luo Fan moved his mind and stepped into the space-time illusion. After he had refined the space-time illusion several times, its breadth and the speed at which time flowed were many times stronger than when he had first created it. At this moment, it was like a small world. It was boundless, and the speed of time flow had reached more than 100 times that of the untainted land. Its mysteriousness was enough to move any innate god. This time, Luo Fan entered the space-time illusion without any intention of hiding. As he stepped in, the whole world of the space-time illusion shook slightly. All the primordial chi contained in it flowed rapidly, almost producing a violent explosion. Under such circumstances, no matter how sensitive the innate god's perception was, or how low his cultivation was, he would be able to sense that there was a big change. Those with more sensitive perception, such as Yusu and others, easily discovered the arrival of Luo Fan. For a moment, a strong aura descended from the sky and resonated with each other. The whole space-time illusion seemed to have changed into another world. Sensing the hundreds of thousands of auras, Luo Fan smiled slightly. He lifted his feet and stepped lightly into the void. With a slight thought, a huge magic cloud quickly condensed and formed. In a short while, it had already condensed into a magic cloud with a radius of 10,000 miles, covering the sky and covering the space-time illusion. Today, I have something important to discuss with you. I hope you can come for a while. After condensing the magic cloud, Luo Fan said. His voice was not loud. It was very calm, just like an ordinary person speaking. However, this voice was very mysterious and poured into the ears of every innate god in every inch of the space-time illusion. Although the space-time illusion was set up by Luo Fan did not prepare a special cave abode, nor did he build a meeting place or a gathering place. Therefore, he could only directly condense a magic cloud in the void to serve as a meeting place. Fortunately, using a magic cloud as a meeting place was not considered rude, nor did it feel vulgar. It was also appropriate. The innate gods that could be invited were all extremely powerful. At the moment, they had at least attained Tao. Flying was naturally not a problem for them. Although those innate gods were invited by Yusu and others, they had lived in the space-time illusion for hundreds of thousands of years. They could be considered to have received many favors from Luo Fan, so they were naturally grateful to Luo Fan. Now that Luo Fan had invited them, they naturally had to give him face. Therefore, after a short while after Luo Fan spoke, many rays of light rushed out from various parts of the space-time illusion. They quickly landed on the magic cloud and turned into innate gods one after another. The first to come up was naturally Immortal Tan Mu and the others with the highest cultivation. The lower the cultivation of the innate gods, the weaker they were. As soon as these innate gods came up, they naturally greeted Luo Fan. Many of them even expressed their gratitude to Luo Fan for being able to set up such a mysterious formation to help them with their cultivation. Luo Fan responded appropriately. Not long after, all the innate gods in the space-time illusion had arrived on the magic cloud. Nearly 1 million innate gods gathered together. Each innate god at least had the ability to attain Tao. Among them, there were even some cultivators who had reached the realm of true immortals. Although they were aware of the severity of the situation and had restrained their auras after stepping on the auspicious cloud, they were, after all, so many innate gods, and their power was not simple. When they gathered together, the momentum created by them was extremely strong, and it caused all kinds of mysterious phenomena in the void. 5 colored rays of light appeared out of nowhere and circled around the entire auspicious cloud without dispersing. Looking at so many innate gods, Luo Fan's face was calm. He wasn't excited, nor was he disappointed. There were more than 800,000 innate gods, which was already a huge number. Their combined power was enough to shock the world. It could be said that the most powerful force in the entire untainted land was gathered in front of him. However, although there seemed to be a lot of them, when they were scattered across the entire untainted land, they could only be regarded as a drop of water in the ocean. With a splash, they could disappear without a trace. It was basically impossible to rely on these innate gods to defend the entire untainted land and survive the great tribulation of heaven and earth without Luo Fan's various preparations. Seeing that everyone had arrived, Luo Fan began to speak. At first, he naturally expressed his gratitude and politeness. He expressed his joy and gratitude that everyone had given him face and that they were willing to survive the great tribulation of heaven and earth together. Then, he changed the topic and talked about the seriousness of the great tribulation. He talked about how much effort he had put into this great tribulation. Finally, he talked about the method that he had discussed with Immortal Sandalwood and the others a few months ago. These words had already been said to everyone by Immortal Sandalwood and the others. After all, they had to help Luo Fan choose innate gods to control those jade plates and help Luo Fan protect the entire untainted land. They even said more than Luo Fan. The situation was even more dangerous than what Luo Fan had said. Luo Fan had done more than he had said, and he had even said that what they needed to do this time was even more important. Chapter 360. Chapter 400. Chapter 400 Understanding the Way of Xiandao. Although they were shocked, the people here weren't ordinary people. Even if they were shocked, there weren't any chaotic discussions. Only their expressions turned solemn. After Luo Fan finished, Immortal Sandalwood and the others came forward to explain. At the same time, they introduced the 100,000 innate gods that they had selected to Luo Fan. If ordinary people were to introduce the 100,000 innate gods, they would not be able to do it even in a few years. But for Luo Fan and the others, it was just a matter of a few breaths. After all, none of them were mortals. At the very least, they were innate gods who had attained the Tao. With just a thought, billions of thoughts flashed through their minds. In addition, Luo Fan had received these innate gods before, so it was not that he did not know them. At this time, he just wanted to tell them which innate gods had been selected and which ones had not. Therefore, as everyone's senses intertwined, this matter was completed. After that, Luo Fan looked indifferent, and his actions were polite. He didn't seem too enthusiastic, but he didn't let these innate gods feel neglected. After a conversation, except for the 100,000 innate gods, Luo Fan let the other innate gods go, cultivate, visit friends, or make their own choices. The innate gods were different from the people of the later secular world. They were all people with high cultivation realms. None of the innate gods that were left behind felt that they were valued and shed tears of gratitude. The innate gods that were sent away by Luo Fan did not feel that they were left out. They just remained calm and indifferent doing their own thing. After Luo Fan let the innate gods stay, he didn't say much. Then he told them his thoughts and said, "For this great tribulation of heaven and earth, Fan specially refined 100,000 jade plates. With these jade plates, even Taoist Sandalwood can increase his power greatly. He can also use all kinds of magic. It's also very possible for him to incarnate into millions of people and contribute to the great tribulation of heaven and earth in thousands of years. Today, I will hand these jade plates to you. I hope that you can familiarize yourselves with them and have a better chance of surviving the great tribulation in the future." After Luo Fan finished speaking, a hint of joy flashed across the faces of the 100,000 innate gods present. These innate gods were friends with Junren Mu and the others. Naturally, they had heard from them about the power of the jade token that Luo Fan had taught them. Hearing what Luo Fan had said, they finally knew that it was not a lie. How could they not be happy? Upon seeing this, Luo Fan didn't hesitate any longer. He raised his hand and waved lightly. Then, 100,000 jade tokens rushed out from his sleeve. Countless light halos suddenly appeared and were distributed according to the characteristics of each innate god. How profound was Luo Fan's cultivation? Through the previous conversation, he already knew the characteristics of each of these innate gods. He knew that these innate gods were suitable for those jade pendants, and that they could bring out the full power of those jade pendants. However, it wasn't impossible for him to achieve this. There were a total of 100,000 innate gods present, including Jinren Tan Mu and the others. There were more. However, Luo Fan only gave out 100,000 jade pendants. Jinren Tan Mu and the others naturally didn't have any jade pendants. However, they knew that Luo Fan must have made arrangements. Thus, there wasn't a trace of worry or dissatisfaction on their faces. They just looked at the innate gods holding the jade pendants in shock. The star beasts that Luo Fan had spent tens of millions of years to cultivate were naturally not simple creatures. Even if they were slightly inferior in nature, when 1 billion of them gathered together, it was enough to shock the mind of any innate god. These innate gods stood there, holding the jade pendants. They all felt that their strength had increased by a few times, and they also felt that they had gained all kinds of mysterious divine powers. These divine powers were cultivated by the star beasts. With the support of many star beasts, these innate gods could control these divine powers by holding the jade pendants. However, they didn't need to use any of their own strength, nor did they need to use any of their minds. In this way, for most of these innate gods who had just achieved Tao, the increase in strength was so great that it could be said to be earth-shaking. Moreover, this was only the second thing. More importantly, it allowed them to see a higher level of cultivation and let them know the use of a higher level of power. This, however, had endless benefits for their future cultivation. These innate gods couldn't help but feel happy and shocked. After the joy and shock, these innate gods held the jade pendants and refused to let go. They all expressed their gratitude to Luo Fan, saying that they would not relax in the great trial of heaven and earth in thousands of years, and that they would give everything they had. When Luo Fan heard what they said, a smile gradually appeared on his face. Of course, he was not proud. He just felt that with this sentence, his chances of surviving the great trial of heaven and earth would be greatly increased. Fellow Taoists, there's no need to be so polite. We are all for the safety of the untainted world. If I have the ability, I will do more. If you have the ability, you will definitely do the same. Why do you need to thank me? Luo Fan laughed. There were many innate gods present, so they could not argue with Luo Fan one by one. They just kept expressing their gratitude. After a while, Luo Fan appeased the crowd, then changed the topic and said, "This great trial involves the entire untainted world. If only we innate gods gather in one place, no matter how strong we are, we will definitely not be able to defend the entire untainted world. Therefore, Fan has a presumptuous request. I hope that you will consider it." At this time, the benefits had been given, so these innate gods naturally could not refuse Luo Fan's words. They immediately said, but they did not dare to disobey his orders. Luo Fan was very satisfied and said, "Based on my understanding of the untainted world over the years, I have divided the most central part of the untainted world into 129,600 regions, each of which has a radius of about 12 trillion miles. I want all of you to spread out and guard one region each." What do you think? 12 trillion miles. The sound of people gasping could not help but be heard from everywhere. The entire auspicious cloud was silent except for the sound of people gasping. When Taoist Master Tamu heard this, he could not help but gasp. Seeing everyone's reaction, he knew that it was time for him to speak. He immediately turned to Luo Fan and said with a wry smile, "Fellow Taoist, don't you think too highly of us? Not to mention 12 trillion miles. Even if it's 100 million or 2,000 miles, I'm afraid it's difficult for us to guard it." Beside him, Yu Su and the others could not help but nod. These innate gods had traveled all over the untainted world for tens of thousands of years. While they had seen and learned a lot, they also knew the vastness of the untainted world. They also knew what a terrifying number 12 trillion miles was. Even if they had reached the peak of the realm of true immortals, it would take them several years to travel all over this region, let alone those innate gods who were only in the realm of individual immortals and had just achieved the Tao. It was simply wishful thinking for them to guard such a large area. Besides, even if you have a way for us to guard such a large area, there are only 100,000 fellow Taoists here. There's no way we can fill up the 129,600 areas, Taoist Master Tan Mu said as he changed the topic. As soon as he said this, the shocked expressions on the faces of the innate gods present gradually disappeared. Taoist Master Tan Mu's words seemed to be questioning Luo Fan, but in fact, he was explaining to the crowd. Only after hearing his question did everyone remember how powerful Luo Fan was. Naturally, he knew the limits of everyone. Since he was able to speak in such a manner, he naturally had a way to solve this matter. There was no need for them to doubt him. What made them puzzled was the last question that Taoist Master Tan Mu had asked about the wrong number. Luo Fan glanced at Taoist Master Tan Mu and saw that although there was some bitterness on his face, there was not a trace of doubt. Obviously, this question was not really puzzled, but just to cooperate with him. He could not help but smile and nod at him. After that, he said, "Fellow Taoists, you don't have to worry about this. Although there are many extraterrestrial demons, they can't be everywhere and appear in every corner of the untainted world. I asked all of you to split up and guard so that you can find out where they appear and block them so that the other Taoists can rush over to defend. As for how to let all of you sense such a large distance and how to quickly rush to those positions, you don't have to worry about these. I already have a perfect plan. You don't have to worry about the wrong number. As for the remaining 29,600 areas, I'm not talented, but I can take care of them." When everyone heard what Luo Fan said, their faces showed shock and contemplation. After a long time, they came to a sudden realization. Previously, they were influenced by Luo Fan's words, but they did not seriously think about it. They just simply felt that it was impossible. At this moment, after hearing Luo Fan's words, they suddenly realized that it was just as Luo Fan had said. It was not impossible for them to defend such a huge area. And the shock on their faces was naturally because of what Luo Fan had said. Luo Fan could take care of those 29,600 areas by himself. At this point, everyone had a direct impression of Luo Fan's divine ability. He felt that he couldn't even control 100,000th of an area, but Luo Fan actually dared to say that he could defend nearly 30,000 areas. The difference was so great that it had exceeded the range that any number could describe. At this point, even the innate gods who were arrogant in the past had no thoughts of competing with Luo Fan. Taoist Master Tan Mu said what everyone was thinking. "Fellow Taoist divine might is earth-shattering." Luo Fan chuckled. He was neither humble nor complacent. He just smiled calmly. After a while, when everyone's expressions returned to normal, Luo Fan raised his hand and clapped in the void. As the void changed, the endless rays of light that had condensed above quickly changed. They constantly twisted and rotated, evolving into all kinds of incredible shapes, and finally turned into a pattern that was similar to the whole auspicious cloud. This pattern was very strange. It was like a very irregular triangular oval. The edges were very irregular, and it looked uneven and bumpy. Looking at this pattern, almost all the innate gods' eyes shone with a very strange light. They seemed to be puzzled, but also familiar, as if they could comprehend something from it. Luo Fan thought of something and raised his hand gently. In this pattern, there were suddenly countless silk threads moving quickly. In the blink of an eye, they had flowed through the whole pattern, directly dividing it into 129,600 areas. Then, these silk threads did not stop, but continued to outline. In a short while, the pattern's shape changed greatly, fluctuating between high and low. The whole pattern, which was originally only a little strange, became extremely mysterious, as if there was some kind of mysterious truth coming out from it. It even faintly connected with some inexplicable existence in the dark, reflecting each other, producing some kind of inexplicable resonance, and giving birth to a supreme power. This is the untainted land. A cry of surprise came from Reverend Tan Mu's mouth, and every innate god on the entire auspicious cloud trembled with power. Waves of powerful aura descended from the sky, and endless power intertwined, creating an earth-shattering momentum. Heaven and earth trembled, and the auspicious cloud moved. If it wasn't for the fact that this cloud was condensed by Luo Fan and contained unfathomable mysteries, it would have been scattered by this impact. It really is the untainted land. That place is where I was born, Yi Fuqian muttered to himself. When everyone heard Taoist Master Tanmu's words, they were extremely shocked. They even felt enlightened and realized where that familiar feeling came from. In an instant, they began to discuss like mortals, and the auspicious cloud buzzed like a market. Luo Fan did not stop them. He just raised his hand and moved it, controlling the lines to outline above, constantly perfecting the terrain. As he outlined, the whole pattern became more complete and clearer. The terrain became more and more obvious, and gradually they could see the location of Buzhou Mountain, the lake where Lin Tian Nan was, the flaming mountain where Fentian appeared, the Yu River where Yisu was born, and the location where many innate gods were born. Because of this, many innate gods could recognize those places and felt that they were familiar. Because of this familiarity, these innate gods felt that it was incredible and shocking. They did not think that this was Luo Fan's nonsense, casually condensing it and saying that it was the topographic map of the untainted land. After knowing this, all the innate gods were indescribably shocked by Luo Fan's incredible magic power. Before, they still thought that Luo Fan was one of them, just a few steps ahead of them, and that they would reach this step sooner or later. But at this moment, they finally removed Luo Fan from their category. At this moment, Luo Fan had already reached an inconceivable realm in their eyes. It had already far exceeded their imagination. They even felt that no matter how hard they worked, they would never be able to reach Luo Fan's current realm. These innate gods had come to Buzhou Mountain from all over the untainted land, so they naturally had a very clear understanding of how vast the untainted land was. The clear understanding of such matters even caused them to feel slight despair. They felt that they would never be able to see the end of the chaos world, and they would never be able to know how vast the chaos world was. But at this moment, the topographic map of the entire untainted land suddenly appeared above their heads. How could they not feel that it was inconceivable? How could they not feel despair? How could they not feel despair? The sound of discussion gradually disappeared. Everyone's expression became fanatical. They stared at the topographic map above and carefully observed how complete the whole topographic map was. They wanted to know how Luo Fan had sketched out the topographic map that they had never dreamed of. Luo Fan was not in the mood to pay attention to them. At this moment, he had already completely focused his attention on the topographic map above. It seemed that it was very easy for him to sketch out the topographic map, but in fact, he had put all his attention on it. No one knew the vastness of the untainted land better than him. However, Luo Fan could only go for 1/10 of the untainted land. He had not even been to the center of the untainted land, let alone the other ends. Therefore, if he wanted to complete the entire topographic map of the untainted land, he naturally could not rely on his own memory. Instead, he needed the help of some incredible and mysterious magical powers. More importantly, he still needed the magic treasure Sky Observing Mirror that he had refined to monitor the untainted land. At this moment, Luo Fan completely integrated his mind with Sky Observing Boy. With the help of Sky Observing Boy's observation ability, he tried hard to sketch out the entire topographic map of the untainted land. Under such circumstances, there is an endless amount of information flowing through his mind at every moment, attacking his sea of consciousness world and attacking his divine soul. In such a state, he naturally could not pay attention to the other innate gods. After half a day, Luo Fan had just finished outlining the entire topographic map, and a primordial land that had shrunk countless times appeared above everyone's heads. With the appearance of the topographic map, the whole world shook violently. The supreme Great Tao seemed to change along with it. There was an incomparably mysterious power that combined with the map, causing the map to constantly change and change. Unknowingly, it actually gave birth to some kind of mysterious power, as if it had come to life. It was like a real land, and there was even a faint wave of earth yuan qi lingering in it. So this is what the untainted land looks like. Taoist Sandalwood Side. There seems to be a mysterious formation in it, but I don't know if it's real or not. The Buzhou mountain god frowned as if he had encountered an extremely difficult problem. After doing all this, Luo Fan felt a little tired. He took a few breaths and slightly moved his mind. The Tai Tao fruit in his body slightly expanded and contracted, and the tiredness was instantly recovered. After recovering, he did not speak, but looked up at the topographic map of the untainted land above him. Chapter 361. Chapter 401. Introduction: The Four Extremes of the Untainted Land. So, it's because I've seen the Great Desolate Ancient Formation that I'm able to replicate the terrain of the entire Great Desolate Land with the help of Sky Gazer Boy. Waves of enlightenment flashed within Luo Fan's mind. In the blink of an eye, he had a deeper understanding of the Untainted Land Ancient Formation, and he felt that he seemed to have understood more about the mysteries of the Untainted Land Ancient Formation. The earth power contained in the vast, primitive land underneath him was surging, making him feel as if he had been blessed by the boundless earth power. Now, he could easily do many things that he used to have to spend a lot of energy and a lot of means to do. To be able to reach this step was something that Luo Fan had never thought of before. It could be considered a rather unexpected gain. After all, before he began to outline the topographic map, all Sky Gazer Boy could do was to reflect the rough outline of the entire Untainted Land Ancient Formation. Luo Fan only intended to reflect the rough outline with the help of Sky Gazer Boy, and then divide it into 129,600 regions through calculation. After sighing for a long time, he turned his head to look at the other innate gods around him. At this moment, almost all the innate gods looked surprised and shocked. They all raised their heads to look at the miniature Untainted Land Ancient Formation above the void. The power in their bodies kept surging, and they seemed to have fallen into a state of enlightenment. This is a rare opportunity. The Untainted Land Ancient Formation and the Untainted Land Ancient Formation have some mysterious connection. Although this topographic map only outlines the terrain of the Untainted Land Ancient Formation and can't understand all the mysteries of the Untainted Land Ancient Formation, I can still understand some of the mysteries of the Formation Tao. Such a thought flashed in Luo Fan's mind. With this thought, he naturally would not disturb these innate gods. He just stood there quietly, waiting for them to come back to their senses. This wait lasted for more than half a year. For all the innate gods present, time was just a number. For them, more than half a year was like the blink of an eye. Therefore, after half a year, when Taoist Master Tan Mu came back to his senses, he didn't feel guilty for wasting half a year. He only bowed to Luo Fan and said, "Even though I've said it countless times, I still have to say it again. Fellow Taoist abilities are truly amazing." Luo Fan smiled and said, "This is also a coincidence." As Taoist Sandalwood came back to his senses, the other innate gods also came back to their senses. They all expressed their gratitude and admiration to Luo Fan. Luo Fan returned their greetings and comforted them for another 10 days. After that, he carefully inspected everyone, and he noticed that through the process of comprehending the topography of the primordial world, everyone's cultivation realm and strength did not increase by much, but their auras had changed slightly, and they seemed to have gained something and comprehended some profound Tao. Seeing this, Luo Fan smiled. He was not unhappy at all, but happy for them. At the same time, he was happy for the great increase in the power of the great trial of heaven and earth after thousands of years. With a slight movement of his mind, the faint topographic map of the great desolation world above him changed slightly. The shadows of names appeared on the surface of the 100,000 areas on the topography map. These names were the names of each of the innate gods. Impressively, he had combined the characteristics of each area of the primordial world according to the life essence of each of the innate gods and corresponded them one by one. When everyone saw the changes in the topography, they didn't need Luo Fan to say anything, and they knew what Luo Fan meant. They immediately expressed to Luo Fan that they understood and that they would not disappoint Luo Fan. Luo Fan smiled and said, "Fellow Taoists, you must have memorized this topography, Yes, yes, everyone said. Seeing this, Luo Fan nodded. He raised his hand and waved gently. All the strange phenomena in the void disappeared, and the topography map disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. There was only that mysterious multicolored light in the void. Even the topography map had disappeared. The various strange auras produced by the topography map, and the aura that appeared from the Supreme Great Tao and connected to the topography map naturally disappeared without a trace. When everyone heard what Luo Fan said, they roughly guessed what Luo Fan was going to do. However, when they saw that Luo Fan had dispersed the mysterious topography map, they still felt a little disappointed, and they could not help but sigh. When Luo Fan heard everyone's sigh, he did not continue to talk about it. He just changed the topic and said, "Fellow Taoists, please familiarize yourself with the Jade Token in the illusion of space-time. Wait for me to prepare the conditions for you to control such a large area. It will only take more than 20 years in the primordial world. For this illusion, there should be more than 2,000 years. I believe that by then, you should be able to roughly control this Jade Token. You can also go to various places to guard and prepare so that you can control these areas perfectly before the great calamity arrives. I wonder what fellow Taoists think." "That's how it should be." Luo Fan's reply was naturally this. Luo Fan smiled and bowed to everyone. When everyone saw that, they knew that the meeting time had passed. They hurriedly returned the greeting to Luo Fan. Then, they turned into streams of light and flew in all directions. They dispersed to various parts of the illusion of space-time to cultivate. After Luo Fan had modified the illusion of space-time several times, it had changed drastically. Be it in terms of breadth or other aspects, it had improved greatly. There were naturally many Khanate gods who were scattered around to familiarize themselves with the space of the Jade Token. However, there was no need for Luo Fan to worry. Although the Khanate gods had left, Perfected Tanmu and the others stayed behind and did not leave with the crowd. After all, they did not believe that Luo Fan would not make arrangements for them. When Luo Fan saw that Perfected Tanmu and the others were staying behind, he smiled and said, "Fellow Taoists, you are powerful, but you have more important things to do. There's no need to be anxious. Fellow Taoist, you will naturally make arrangements. We will naturally know." Perfected Tanmu chuckled. Luo Fan's smile did not change. He raised his hand and waved gently. As the primordial chi condensed, a miniature topographic map of the untainted land appeared in front of him. This topographic map was not only 1,000 times smaller than the previous topographic map, but also 1,000 times simpler. However, one could only see the shape of the untainted land in front of them. After condensing the topographic map, Luo Fan raised his hand and pointed at 4 places on the topographic map. As he did so, 4 spots on the topographic map lit up brightly. 3 of these 4 spots were distributed on the edge of the land, and 1 was in the depths of the untainted land. However, it was not in the center. It looked like a random point, but in fact it seemed to contain some kind of profound rules. As these 3 spots were pointed out by Luo Fan, this topographic map, which was originally many times simpler than the previous one, suddenly underwent a huge change. It was as if it had changed from a random scribble to a wonderful masterpiece drawn by a master. It was almost completely different. Among all the Khanate gods in the entire untainted land, Perfected Tanmu and the others were second only to Luo Fan in terms of cultivation realm. When they saw Luo Fan's 4 points, their eyes lit up as if they had discovered something that they had overlooked in the past. The entire world seemed to have become complete. These 4 positions are the 4 poles of the untainted land: the Northwest Pole, the South Pole, the East Pole, and the Earth Pole. The smile on Luo Fan's face had already disappeared. He looked at Perfected Tanmu and the others seriously. At this moment, there were 6 people in front of Luo Fan: Perfected Tanmu, Fentian, Yusu, the god of Buzhou Mountain, Yuan Tong, and the Yuan couple. Hearing what Luo Fan said, the expressions of the 6 people changed drastically. How could the 4 poles of the untainted land be like this? Shouldn't it be the 4 poles of the east, west, south, and north? Fantion was shocked and asked. The others also had puzzled looks on their faces. Although their thoughts might not be the same as Fantion's, they were also very puzzled. Obviously, they hoped to hear Luo Fan's explanation of the 4 poles of the untainted land. Luo Fan looked at the crowd and said, "Of course it's not that simple. The profoundness contained within is extremely mysterious, and even I can't fully understand it. However, it is definitely true that these are the 4 poles of the untainted land." When the crowd heard Luo Fan's words, they did not reveal any expressions of disappointment. Instead, they seemed to have understood something. Sometimes, it was not necessary to explain everything clearly in order for others to understand. Luo Fan did not care about how the crowd reacted. He raised his hand and pointed at one of the 4 bright spots and said, "This is where we are now. It is called Buzhou Mountain, which is the extreme of the world and the spine of Pangu. It concerns the survival of the world and is extremely important. If Buzhou Mountain is destroyed, the sky will tilt to the southeast, and the earth will sink to the northwest. There will even be countless continents in the endless starry sky that will collide with the untainted land. It will produce unpredictable results, and we cannot afford to lose it." When the crowd heard this, they were shocked and nodded their heads. Luo Fan raised his hand and pointed at another point at the edge and said, "This is the extreme south. There is a supreme sky tree, which is also indomitable and has the ability to support the heavens. It is also the source of the vitality of the plants and trees of the untainted land. If it is destroyed, not only will it affect the stability of the world, it will produce a slightly weaker change than the destruction of Buzhou Mountain, but it will also be extremely terrifying. Even the vitality of the plants and trees of the untainted land will be greatly weakened. In the future, no plants and trees will be able to cultivate divine abilities, and it will be a great sin that is enough to consign us to eternal damnation." Everyone was even more shocked, but they did not have the slightest doubt and continued to nod their heads. Luo Fan moved his hand gently and arrived at the last point at the edge. He said, "This is the extreme east. There is a fusong tree that connects the heavens and the earth. It also has the ability to support the heavens, and it can communicate with the sun, moon, and stars, affecting the laws of the untainted land. If it is destroyed, the eastern heavens and earth will not be able to support it. Not only will there be drastic changes in the world, but there will also be 10,000 suns in the sky and 10,000 moons in the earth. At that time, the untainted land may return to chaos. Except for the innate gods, all matter and all life will disappear. We cannot afford to lose it." When the crowd heard this, their faces were already lifeless, and they did not know what expression to use. Luo Fan did not care about the crowd. He raised his hand and changed the position, pointing at a point in the depths of the untainted land. He said, "This is the extreme of the earth, and there is an untainted land ancient formation there. It is a natural formation that innately communicates with the entire untainted land. It has an extremely close connection with every inch of the untainted land, and it supports the existence of the entire untainted land. If it is destroyed, the untainted land will collapse, and the earth will no longer exist. It will turn into nothingness. Even the innate gods can only linger on with their last breaths." When the crowd heard Luo Fan's words, they stared blankly at the topographic map. After a long while, they gradually regained their senses. All kinds of expressions flashed across the faces of the 6 people. What Luo Fan said at this time was really too shocking for them. After Pangu created the world, his power was exhausted, and he transformed into all living things. His backbone became Buzhou Mountain to support the world. They naturally knew about this memory that they had obtained from Pangu's origin spirit. They had long understood the principles of Buzhou Mountain. Therefore, when they heard Luo Fan talk about the importance of Buzhou Mountain, they were only shocked, and they made up their minds to guard Buzhou Mountain. However, when Luo Fan mentioned the Southern Supreme Sky Tree, it was something that they had never heard of or understood. They knew that it was of great importance. Although they were even more shocked, they could still accept it. At most, They would also include the southern supreme sky tree in their protection area. Then, when Luo Fan mentioned the Fuso tree, it was beyond their imagination. The sun, moon, and stars were endless in the endless starry sky. The sun rose, and the moon set, illuminating the earth. They had never changed. How could they have imagined that the operation rules of the sun, moon, and stars were connected to the Fuso tree? How could they have imagined that the Fuso tree was so important that its destruction would cause the calamity of 10,000 suns and 10,000 moons? Although Luo Fan had only said a few words, the amount of information contained in it was enough to make everyone feel that even the existence second only to Luo Fan in the primordial world could not process it. That was why they were stunned. As for the description of the primordial ancient array, it was even more unbelievable. It made them feel that their understanding of the entire primordial world had been instantly flipped. What you said is really unbelievable, perfected Sandalwood sighed after a long time. Naturally, it was not that he did not believe Luo Fan's words. He was just sighing emotionally. I only realized all of this when I was sketching the terrain of the primordial world just now. Luo Fan sighed. Since there is such a flaw, do you have any way to deal with it? Perfected Sandalwood sighed. After sighing for a long time, he asked. When Luo Fan heard that, his expression became much more relaxed. He said, Fellow Taoists, you don't have to worry. Although the 4 poles of the primordial world are considered a huge flaw, they're the 4 poles of the primordial world after all. Without the cultivation base of a golden immortal, it is absolutely difficult to destroy the 4 poles. As long as one or a few of us go to guard the 4 poles, we can protect the 4 poles. I see. Hearing Luo Fan's words, Perfected Sandalwood and the others heaved a sigh of relief. Seeing everyone's reaction, Luo Fan smiled slightly and said, I still have a lot of jade tablets here. Fellow Taoists, your cultivation is quite high, and you need to protect the 4 extremities. I can give each of you 1,296 jade tablets, which should be able to perfectly protect the 4 extremities. What do you think, fellow Taoists? That's even better. Everyone was naturally overjoyed. A single jade token was enough to allow their cultivation to progress by leaps and bounds, let alone 1,296 jade tokens. When Luo Fan saw this, he slightly smiled. He raised his hand and sent it out gently. Then, a large number of jade tablets rushed out from his universe in his sleeve. They turned into 5 parts and appeared in front of the 6 of them. Yuan Qi and Yuan Tong would naturally not separate, and 1 jade plate was enough. Fellow Taoist Yuan Tong and his wife will guard the Fusong tree. Fellow Taoist Fantian will guard the Supreme Sky tree. Fellow Taoist Yuji will go to the Primordial Ancient Formation, and fellow Taoist Buzhou will guard the Buzhou Mountain. As for fellow Taoist Sandalwood, you have to be more fortunate and go wherever there is danger. Luo Fan casually divided the places that everyone would guard. In fact, there was no need to say this. Everyone knew in their hearts. The god of Buzhou Mountain was the mountain god of Buzhou Mountain, so he naturally guarded the Buzhou Mountain. Fun Tian was of the fire attribute, so it was natural for him to guard the Supreme Sky Tree. Yuan Tong and his wife cultivated the great Tao of patterns, obtained immortal bodies, and reflected the stars in the sky. They also had a close relationship with the Fusong tree, so they were naturally the best choice to guard the Fusong tree. Yu Ji was of the water attribute, so it was natural for him to guard the primordial ancient formation. As for Taoist Sandalwood, his body was fused with the void, so he needed to guard it. He could not be fixed to one pole, so he could only move about freely. When everyone heard this, they all felt that Luo Fan's arrangements were excellent. They smiled and bowed before collecting the 1,296 jade plates one by one. Since everyone knows what to do, I won't say anything more. I only hope that everyone can use these jade plates properly when I return, said Luo Fan with a smile. Of course, said Taoist Sandalwood and the others. After saying that, they knew that it was not good to stay for long, so they bid farewell to Luo Fan and left. Luo Fan naturally would not ask them to stay, so he sent them off. Then, he waved his hand and the huge magic cloud under his feet dissipated. His body swayed, and he was out of the space-time illusion. After leaving the space-time illusion, he did not go back to the spirit space or the seeking cave to cultivate. Instead, he turned around, turned into a stream of light, and rushed down into the ground under his feet. At this moment, with Luo Fan's cultivation realm, the Earth's surface was no longer an obstacle to him. His speed underground was not any slower than when he was flying through the air. Under such circumstances, in the blink of an eye, he had already fallen 4,900 miles underground and arrived at the Yellow Spring. The Yellow Spring was the condition that could allow the innate gods to control such a huge area, which Luo Fan had calculated long ago. To let an innate god control such a huge area, it was impossible to just improve the perception ability of an innate god. After all, it was a vast area with a radius of 12 trillion miles. Even Luo Fan himself could not control it with his own perception. What Luo Fan could do was to use some strange network to let the innate gods sense the situation of the huge area through this network, and use it to control the huge area that made people dizzy. And the best network was the Yellow Spring, which flowed everywhere in the untainted land and was only thousands of miles away from the Earth. Chapter 362. The Netherworld and the Netherworld. Luo Fan's current location was directly below Buzhou Mountain, and it just happened to be the source of the nether springs of the entire primordial world. If he wanted to refine the entire nether springs to change its nature, he had to do it here. When Luo Fan saw the familiar nether springs, he noticed that there were still countless tangible talisman ghosts striving to survive within it, and the number was countless times more than the last time he saw it. Obviously, the injuries caused by the innate god that was tempted by the great Freedom Devil Master had recovered. When Luo Fan came to the nether springs this time, his situation was different from the last time. His cultivation realm had increased by countless times, and his divine abilities had also increased by countless times. With a turn of his eyes, the golden and silver lights trembled slightly, and he'd already seen through the surface of the nether springs. He instantly went deep into it and saw the essence that was concealed beneath the surface. The nether springs was condensed from the accumulation of boundless heavy turbidine chi, and it was divided into countless tributaries that formed an extremely complicated network that covered every inch of the underground space of the entire primordial world. The primordial world was so vast, and a few thousand kilometers wide nether springs was absolutely insignificant compared to it. Since this nether springs could cover the entire primordial world, it was naturally impossible for it to not contain any profundities. Within Luo Fan's true eyes of sun and moon, the appearance of the nether springs before him gradually underwent an indescribable change. The heavy turbid Inchi vanished before his eyes, and what replaced it were strands of complicated and profound lines that seemed to be connected with some sort of inconceivable existence. These lines intertwined together and formed an enormous sphere 4,900 kilometers below Buzhou Mountain. This sphere was extremely profound, and it was condensed from countless lines. It was like an enormous ball of lines, and they intertwined within it as if they were developing some sort of supreme profundity of the Grand Tao. With a thought, Luo Fan took a step forward and stepped into the enormous ball of lines before him. The ball of lines was hidden beneath the surface of the nether springs, and entering it was naturally no different from entering the nether springs at other locations. Luo Fan's body didn't have the feeling of being entangled by the lines, and he only felt that he'd entered an extremely ordinary location. However, what Luo Fan saw and sensed was not the case. What he saw and sensed was an endless amount of threads wrapping around his body. Every single step he took would cut through a myriad of threads, causing these threads to undergo a myriad of profound changes, and it seemed as if a myriad of vital energy was changing at all times. So that's how it is. It seems that I really did let go of a great treasure last time. A faint smile appeared on Luo Fan's face. Although this ball of thread was huge, it was nothing to Luo Fan. In just a short while, Luo Fan's figure had already entered the depths of the ball of lines, arriving at the source of the endless lines. The source of this line was an extremely mysterious, extremely fine, and almost indistinguishable point. That point was just like the singularity Luo fans saw at the entrance of the space-time tunnel. It was extremely tiny, as if it had no interior, yet it contained endless mysteries, with countless existences rushing out from it. This was also because Luo Fan had attained the primordial Tao fruit and cultivated the true eyes of sun and moon, which allowed him to see things that he could not see in the past. That was why he was able to see this mysterious singularity, which contained endless mysteries. Seeing this singularity, Luo Fan couldn't help but smile. This must be the origin of the Nether Springs. It's a pity that it's sealed off by Buzhou Mountain, or it would have evolved into a world. With a thought, Luo Fan's mind changed. This singularity was, in fact, the embryonic form of a world. It was only because it was sealed off by Pangu's spine that its mysteries could not be unleashed, and it could not evolve into a world. Luo Fan came to the vicinity of the singularity and focused his eyes on it. In the blink of an eye, endless information flowed through his mind, through his eyes. This information contained endless mysteries, and there were billions of rules operating in it. Many of them were what Luo Fan knew when he created the medium-class world and the small-class world, and many of them required him to calm down and comprehend. As the endless information continued to flow through his mind, in the blink of an eye, Luo Fan had already understood the essence of this singularity. The underworld, the netherworld. I see. Luo Fan was suddenly enlightened. The world born from this singularity should be an incomparably mysterious, boundless world. Although this boundless world was one level lower than the primitive world, it was countless times higher than Luo Fan's medium-class world and small-class world. This boundless world would be incomparably vast, directly enveloping almost every inch of space under the ground of the primitive world, forming a legendary netherworld, which was also the mythical underworld world. After this world was formed, all the ghosts and dead things in this world would flow into this boundless world through some mysterious method. When it was completed, the 6 paths of reincarnation would appear directly. And when this boundless world appeared, almost every inch of space under the ground of the primitive world would be completely hidden. If one wanted to enter the yellow spring again, one could not reach it by continuously going down. Without understanding the netherworld and the underworld world, even if one went down 100,000 miles and entered the 18 layers of hell, one would definitely not be able to reach the yellow spring. The underworld world, the yellow spring. Is the collapse of Buzhou Mountain destined? After a long time, Luo Fan could not help but sigh. Without the underworld and the netherworld, there could not be reincarnation. And without reincarnation, the primitive world could not be considered a complete world. If the underworld and the netherworld were to be formed, it meant that the existence that blocked this singularity had to disappear, and naturally, it meant that the Buzhou Mountain formed by Panga's backbone had to collapse. But why is that? Luo Fan frowned, but he couldn't figure out the reason behind it. He felt as if an incomparably huge secret had suddenly revealed the tip of an iceberg. However, this tip of the iceberg was so smooth that he couldn't see through it to see what the iceberg looked like. Well, it's better to refine this yellow spring. Thinking about what will happen in the future is just an illusion. After a long time, Luo Fan sighed. Without hesitation, he raised his hand and waved gently. The void trembled slightly, and the endless lines that existed in his eyes suddenly twisted violently. They constantly swam and made way for a small space. Then, a boy appeared in this space. "Greetings, master." The boy bowed and said to Luo Fan, "Get up." Luo Fan waved his hand and said. Then, he raised his hand and made a grabbing motion. An object that looked like a bronze mirror appeared in his hand. Without hesitation, he pointed at the boy in front of him. The boy's body swayed, and he turned into a stream of light and rushed into the bronze mirror. As he rushed in, the bronze mirror suddenly trembled. In the blink of an eye, billions of rays of light shot out, as if they could penetrate all illusions and reach the truth. The Tai Dao fruit in Luo Fan's body shook slightly and suddenly collapsed, turning into a stream of magic power that began to circulate rapidly in his meridians. During this process, a mysterious and indescribable transformation quickly took place. The 96 million magical power units all changed their forms. Each of them was different, but they were all extremely mysterious mirror shapes that replaced the originally unpredictable and constantly changing magic power units. This magic power unit followed a mysterious and unpredictable trajectory, and after circulating 81 times, it suddenly rushed out of his body like a giant dragon and pounced on the bronze mirror that was emitting billions of rays of light in front of him. The moment this magic power left Luo Fan's body, a faintly discernible sound of the great Tao suddenly flashed through the void. There was even a mysterious fragrance that filled the space within a 10,000-kilometer radius. As the fragrance and the sound of the great Tao flashed, the magic power completely rushed into the copper mirror. The moment the magic power entered, the bronze mirror instantly collapsed and turned into a bronze fog that continuously expanded and radiated. Within it, the dragon formed by the magic power swam wildly and devoured like crazy. After a while, the bronze fog completely disappeared. Only the magic power that emitted the fragrance and produced the faint sound of Tao was left in the void, as if it was looking for something, but it also seemed to be undergoing some kind of inexplicable transformation. This magic power lingered in the world for a total of 3 days and 3 nights. After waiting for 3 days and 3 nights, a thunderous sound that sounded like the sky was falling and the earth was splitting suddenly appeared out of nowhere. The originally faint sound of Tao suddenly became 10,000 times stronger, as if it was the roar of billions of people, turning the area within a radius of 10,000 miles into a world of Tao sounds. The fragrance also increased by 10,000 times, turning the area within a radius of 10,000 miles into a world of fragrance. With this change, the magic power that had been lingering for 3 days and 3 nights suddenly shook, and its body expanded and shrank. Suddenly, a mysterious and indescribable existence was spat out. This existence seemed to be a colorless and transparent light. It was crystal clear, as if there was nothing in it. It was extremely pure, but it also seemed to contain everything in the universe, including everything that anyone who saw this light wanted to see. This light sprayed out more and more, and after a while, it had turned into a ball with a radius of 10,000 feet. The mysterious ball enveloped the singularity and the origin of the entire underworld. Luo Fan raised his hand and waved. The magic power trembled slightly, then dissipated, and with another rush, it returned to his body. With the return of this magic power, the sound of Tao and the fragrance in the void did not weaken in the slightest. Instead, it became even stronger. After the magic power returned to Luo Fan's body, it circled around his body in a mysterious and unpredictable trajectory. After 81 revolutions, it shrank and returned to his dantian, where it once again condensed into a Tai Dao fruit that was like a complete world. Naturally, the magical power units also returned to their original state of being unpredictable, as if they were constantly evolving the millions of mysteries of the world. As the Tai Dao fruit expanded and contracted, the power consumed in the magic power units was completely restored in the blink of an eye. Luo Fan did not care about the Tai Dao fruit. Instead, his eyes flashed with golden and silver light as he stared at the crystal clear, colorless, and transparent light that completely enveloped the area in front of him. In his mind, there was the sutra made up of 1,296 characters. According to what Luo Fan saw, this scripture not only contained the mysteries of the way of space and time, but also had the ability to promote all existences to evolve in the best direction. Whether it was the 3,000 worlds or the compass that appeared not long ago, they were all the same. It was naturally the best to use it to refine the heavenly mirror here. Ever since Luo Fan successfully refined the heavenly mirror, he had directly given it the responsibility of monitoring the untainted land. Because it was of great importance, after attaining the Tai Dao fruit, Luo Fan had refined almost all of his magic treasures. Whether it was the Star Pearl Robe, the Infinite Void Palace, or the Ultimate Square Seal, they had all undergone great changes. Even the Infinite Void Palace had broken through the limit of a treasure of the Immortal Tao and reached the realm of a Tai treasure. However, he did not pay attention to the heavenly mirror. Before this, it had just become a treasure of the Immortal Tao. At this moment, he needed the heavenly mirror to refine the Yellow Springs. If he did not increase its power, it would not be useful. This scripture kept circulating in his mind, over and over again and again. As the scripture circulated, the crystal clear, colorless, and transparent light, which was tens of thousands of feet in circumference, was constantly purified and condensed. It was constantly being refined by some mysterious existence, and in the process, it was constantly being compressed. Luo Fan's thoughts turned extremely fast. In less than a month, he had recited the scripture 129,600 times. As the last word of the scripture was recited for the 29,600 times, the sound of the great Tao and the strange fragrance in the void suddenly disappeared. At the same time, the ball of light, which had already shrunk to a diameter of around 3 feet, also abruptly condensed into a transparent, colorless mirror. The mirror was 3 feet in diameter, extremely mysterious. It stood in front of him, but at first glance, it seemed as if it did not exist. Even when looking through the mirror, the scene behind it did not have any distortion, and there was no refraction. It looked extremely mysterious. However, the mirror did not emit any aura, nor did it produce any aura. It was as ordinary glass. If not now, then when? Luo Fan raised his hand and pointed at the mirror as he shouted. As he shouted and pointed, the space where the mirror was rippled slightly. After the ripple, a young man in a bronze robe appeared. This young man's face was blurry, and his entire body emitted a very obscure fluctuation that seemed to be able to see through everything. It was as if there was nothing in the world, no existence, and no mystery that could escape his perception. After the young man appeared, he bowed at Luo Fan and said, "Greetings, Master." "Thank you, Master, for fulfilling my wish." With a thought, Luo Fan already knew the changes of this sky gazer. He was very satisfied and said, "Get up, go over and fuse your ability with that singular point. Use the power of this singular point to sense the entire Yellow River." "Yes." Sky Watcher Boy bowed and replied. As he spoke, his figure flickered and he took a step forward. He had already arrived before the singular point. Then, with a slight turn, the body of the young man in the bronze robe disappeared and turned back into the colorless and transparent mirror. After this mirror appeared, billions of colorless and transparent lines suddenly surged out from the mirror and poured into the singular point like rivers flowing into the sea. The singularity looked extremely small, as if it had no interior and could not be divided further. However, when the billions of 5-colored transparent lines poured into it, there was no obstruction at all. It was as if there was an infinite space within it, and no matter how many things were poured into it, they would not be able to fill it up. Luo Fan smiled. He was not in a hurry. He condensed the heavy and turbid yin qi in the surroundings under his body and turned it into a khaki cloud. Then he sat down cross-legged and waited quietly. Just as he had expected, the 1,296 characters of the scripture were inexplicably mysterious. After reciting the scripture and being cleansed by his Dharma power, the sky gazer had already been raised from the treasure of the immortal path to the peak of the treasure of the immortal path. It only needed the last bit of opportunity, or the last bit of time, to condense and consolidate, to become a primordial unity treasure. Although it had not become a primordial unity treasure, its power was already many times stronger than before. At this moment, Luo Fan only needed to think, and he could use this sky gazer to see the scene of any location in the primordial world. Of course, this could only be done in a place without restriction or formation shielding. Like the primordial ancient formation, the cave mansions of many innate deities, and the many natural formations of heaven and earth, it was an exception. Although the sky gazer had been raised to the peak of the treasure of the immortal path, its power was, after all, distributed to the entire primordial world. The power allocated to each position was extremely weak. It was already difficult for Luo Fan to see the scene in an ordinary position. It was naturally impossible to break the formation, unless Luo Fan could give up monitoring other positions and focus most of the power of the sky gazer on one place. There are so many natural formations. The primordial world really contains infinite mysteries. Luo Fan observed the images from the sky gazer and could not help sighing with emotion. Through these images, he was able to understand the locations of the untainted land that the heaven observation mirror couldn't see through. Like the stars in the sky, they were sparse, but there were so many of them that they could only be described as tens of thousands. Let me take a closer look. Such thoughts flashed in Luo Fan's mind, and he gradually immersed himself in these images. Before coming here, he did not know that there was a singularity in the yellow spring, nor did he know how powerful the sky gazer would be after he refined it. But at that time, he already had a feeling that it would take more than 20 years to refine the whole yellow spring. So he directly told the innate deities about this time. And now, he was even more convinced of this feeling. Chapter 363. Chapter 403. Into Sitoan Primordial World Interconnection. Hongjun refining after attaining the Tai Dao fruit. Luo Fan's perception of the mysteries of heaven was extremely mysterious and extremely accurate. Just like that, he carefully observed the various scenes and mysteries of the untainted land while quietly waiting for the sky gazer boy to finish his work. In the end, when the sky gazer boy finally changed, more than 20 years had passed. Calculating the time, it was almost time for the wedding date of Luo Fu and Guang Pu that Luo Fan had set. Luo Fan was looking at the images that the sky gazer mirror had penetrated into his mind, searching for the specific situation of the primordial world. Suddenly, he felt an indescribable feeling suddenly appear in his heart. This feeling was incomparably mystical. It was as if a mirror that could only barely reflect images had been remade, making the mirror incredibly clear and able to reflect countless images that could not be reflected in the past. Luo Fan smiled slightly. In the blink of an eye, he understood that the sky gazer boy had finally connected the endless yellow springs that were distributed in the depths of the entire primordial world. He had made some kind of change in their nature, allowing the sky gazer mirror to borrow the power of the endless yellow springs to connect every inch of space in the entire primordial world. Opening his eyes, he raised his head and looked forward. The originally colorless and transparent mirror that seemed as if it did not exist had changed. On the mirror, there were countless tiny spider, silk-like traces. These tiny traces were extremely mysterious, making the sky gazer mirror that could not be seen at all become extremely obvious. It looked like a colorless and transparent leaf with countless veins on it. After such a change, the mirror had completely lost all its concealment power. Even the slowest person would be able to discover its existence when they saw the mirror. They might even discover the incredible power it possessed. Luo Fan thought. The mirror began to change. With a slight shake, a young man in a bronze robe appeared in that position, replacing the mirror. After the young man appeared, he bowed to Luo Fan and said, "The sky gazer mirror and the yellow springs have fused together. It has lost the ability to move. I'm unable to completely bow. Please forgive me, master." Luo Fan's expression changed slightly. He had completely understood. He sighed slightly, but at the same time, he was even more happy. In the past 20 years, the sky gazer boy had used the natural power of the sky gazer mirror to change the nature of the yellow springs, which could even cover every inch of the entire primordial world. He had connected the traces of the yellow springs, which filled every inch of the yellow springs, to serve as the sky gazer boy's sensing antenna. Although such a change was insignificant, Up to now, the Sky Gazer Boy had indeed connected the Yellow Springs. With the help of the Yellow Springs, he could even see countless situations that he could not see clearly in the past. He could even turn these traces into some kind of existence similar to the internet on the Earth in the future, so that the innate gods could use a special method to contact their companions anywhere in the primordial world. However, the Yellow Springs was, after all, very mysterious. The mystery contained in it was, after all, profound and unfathomable. Although the Sky Gazer Boy could use his own magical power to refine the incomparably long Yellow Springs and slightly change its nature, he had already reached the limit of the Immortal Island's treasure and was close to the super realm of Primordial Unity treasure. But at the same time, in the process, the Sky Gazer Mirror was also being changed and assimilated by the Yellow Springs. At this moment, the moment all the changes subsided, the Sky Gazer Boy had already fused with the singularity in the core of the Yellow Springs. As long as this singularity did not undergo great changes, the Sky Gazer Mirror could not move at all. Fortunately, this Sky Gazer Boy does not have the ability to attack or defend. No matter where he is, as long as he can monitor the primordial world and provide a communication network for the entire primordial world, it will be enough. Even if he can't move, it won't affect him at all. This thought flashed in Luo Fan's mind. Therefore, he smiled and said, "It's okay. Just your part." Yes. The Sky Gazer Boy bowed slightly. His body swayed slightly and once again returned to the appearance of a mirror that was covered with countless veins. Luo Fan's thoughts moved slightly. He found that many places that he could not see in the past 20 years suddenly became extremely clear, like the places that were originally shrouded in fog. Almost half of the natural array was instantly broken through, allowing him to grasp everything inside the natural array. The power has increased to such an extent. It's indeed worthy of me to waste so much time waiting here. As Luo Fan thought about this, a thought moved slightly. With the help of the Sky Gazer Mirror, a thought was sent to a certain location in the primordial world along the Yellow Springs. At the same time, in the primordial world, above a layer of astral wind, lightning, and fire 3 trillion kilometers away from Bujo Mountain, a tower-shaped Dharma treasure suddenly shook. In an instant, billions of rays of light shot out. After the light faded, a figure slowly appeared in that spot. This figure's appearance was extremely familiar. It was Hong Jun, who had been separated from Luo Fan for tens of thousands of years. At this moment, Hong Jun's cultivation had already reached the peak of the perfected immortal realm. In terms of cultivation, he was not weaker than perfected Tanmu. Coupled with the fact that he cultivated the Dao fruit Grand Dao, it was the Grand Dao with the most vigorous power. Under the situation that their cultivation realms were the same, his cultivation, strength, and might were superior to Daoist Tanmu. At this moment, Hong Jun hovered in the void with the tower-shaped Dharma treasure above his head. His eyes emitted a distant and deep divine light of wisdom. There was an incomparably deep power fluctuation faintly surging all over his body, stirring the surrounding void and causing the boundless astral wind, lightning, and fire to produce some kind of obscure vibration. Junior brother and junior sister are getting married, but it's not good for me to continue cultivating like this. Hong Jun stood there, his eyes flashing with spiritual light. After a long time, he let out a long breath and said, he had been separated from Luo Fan for tens of thousands of years. In these tens of thousands of years, he had been cultivating in the 33-story tower-shaped Dharma treasure above his head. This tower-shaped Dharma treasure was called Purple Cloud Palace. There were endless astral wind, lightning, and fire lives in it, helping him refine the Dharma treasure day and night. Due to Luo Fan's help, this Dharma treasure had the ability to distort time. Although it could not speed up time hundreds of thousands of times faster than the primordial world, like the limitless Void Palace, it could still reach 300 times. It was much stronger than the space-time illusion. Under such circumstances, he had been separated from Luo Fan for tens of thousands of years. To him, it was millions or even tens of millions of years. During such a long period of time, with Hong Jun's talent, which was even more powerful than Luo Fan's, and the traces of the Tao fruit scripture that Luo Fan had left in his sea of consciousness, his cultivation improved extremely quickly. At this time, although he could not break through the perfected immortal realm and become a golden immortal due to his lack of opportunities, he had already built an extremely solid foundation. In fact, he only needed a little guidance, a little power fluctuation, and a little opportunity to break through the bottleneck and become a golden immortal. According to Hong Jun's original intention, he naturally planned to continue cultivating until he completely broke through, until he could no longer improve through cultivation. Then, he would leave the Dharma treasure to look for Luo Fan and ask for guidance. However, at this moment, it was related to the marriage of his junior brother and junior sister. Even if he was unwilling, he could not continue to ignore it and pretend that nothing had happened. It seems that I have to prepare a gift for the wedding. Yes, junior brother and junior sister have already achieved the Tao fruit. Why not give them a Dharma artifact that I refined? Such a thought suddenly flashed through Hong Jun's mind. After this thought flashed through his mind, he did not hesitate. He raised his hand and pointed at the purple cloud palace above him. The billions of rays of light that the purple cloud palace emitted flashed slightly and disappeared without a trace. Then, the purple cloud palace suddenly descended and rushed into the world of his sea of consciousness. Although the purple cloud palace was a Dharma treasure, it was very different from the other Dharma treasures that Luo Fan had refined. Instead, it was more similar to Luo Fan's Dharma treasure. It was just that its function was different, and its profoundness was different. This was because the Purple Cloud Palace did not have a true treasure spirit. Or it could also be said that the Purple Cloud Palace had been forcibly enhanced by Hong Jun when it was first refined. After some mysterious and unbelievable changes, Hong Jun's spirit had taken on the job of the Dharma treasure's treasure spirit. Because of this, Hong Jun's control of this Dharma treasure was even deeper and more perfect than Luo Fan's control of the Void Wuji Palace. After absorbing the Purple Cloud Palace into the world of his sea of consciousness, his mind moved slightly. The space on the 33rd level of the Purple Cloud Palace had some incredible changes. In every level of space, there were some mysterious substances that were formed. After these mysterious substances were formed, they fluctuated rapidly and continuously condensed. In the blink of an eye, they condensed into a hut on the 33rd level. This hut looked ordinary, but in fact every line, every trajectory, and every turn contained profound and mysterious principles. It was a Dharma treasure that Hong Jun had refined by condensing all his understanding of the Tao fruit Tao. The refining method used for this Dharma treasure was not beyond the stereotype taught by Luo Fan, and it was also refined according to the restriction refining method. However, it already had some of his own characteristics. For example, the number of restrictions that could be refined by this Dharma treasure was not 36, but 72. Only when the 72 restrictions were perfected could it give birth to a treasure spirit and become a Dharma treasure. This seemed to be slightly worse than the restriction refining method taught by Luo Fan, and the difficulty of refining a Dharma treasure was many times higher. However, after it was refined into a Dharma treasure, its power was more than twice as strong as a Dharma treasure with 36 restrictions. In other words, there were gains and losses. It was not worse than the restriction refining method taught by Luo Fan. It's a pity that I'm not as good as Master after all. The Dharma treasure that I refined can only be refined with layers of restrictions. I can't refine a Dharma treasure with perfected restrictions at once. Hong Jun looked at the Dharma treasure that looked like a hut and sighed in his heart. This Dharma treasure was very mysterious, but it only had one layer of restriction. It could only open a small area with a radius of 100,000 feet. Although he could refine the restrictions of this Dharma treasure layer by layer, and finally refine it into a Dharma treasure with 72 restrictions in a short period of time. In that case, this Dharma treasure would also be deeply imprinted with his mark. At that time, this Dharma treasure would be given to his junior brothers and junior sisters, and they would need to spend a lot of energy to erase the mark and imprint their own mark into it. But obviously, it was not worth it. The energy and time spent to erase Hong Jun's mark was long enough for Luo Fu and the others to refine the Dharma Treasure's restrictions from the first layer to the 72nd layer of perfected restrictions. It was because of this consideration. Although Hong Jun felt regretful, he did not continue to refine the Dharma Treasure's restrictions. With a slight thought, the void changed. The Dharma Treasure that looked like a hut flashed and disappeared from the purple cloud palace. In the blink of an eye, it appeared in his hand. It was the size of a palm, but it looked quite cute. It was suitable to be used as a wedding gift. Hong Jun put the hut-shaped Dharma Treasure into his storage space. With a thought, his body turned into a long rainbow and went straight to Buzhou Mountain. Hong Jun had already reached the peak of the perfected immortal realm. It could be said that he had obtained the true teachings of Luo Fan. Although his flying speed was not as fast as Luo Fan's, it was definitely much faster than any other Kane god in the primordial world. At this speed, although he was 3 trillion kilometers away from Buzhou Mountain, he would only need less than a month to cross it. Luo Fan saw Hong Jun's reaction through the Netherworld network and smiled. All of this was within his expectations, but he did not need to be surprised. With a slight thought, he took a step forward, and his body instantly disappeared from the Netherworld. When he reappeared, he was already on the ground, at the place where the space-time illusion was at the foot of Buzhou Mountain. He raised his head and looked into the void. With a slight thought, golden and silver light flickered in his eyes. He had already activated the Sun and Moon True eyes to the limit. As he activated it, his eyes directly saw through the endless distance, through all illusions, and directly saw all the changes on the sun in the depths of the endless starry sky. At this moment, there was already a huge palace above the sun. The palace was majestic and magnificent, but for some reason, it was somewhat similar to the Void Wuji Palace. In other words, it was somewhat similar to the Moon Palace on the moon. There were 3 huge words, Lingxiao Palace, on the horizontal plaque of the palace's main entrance. The palace and the 108 crypts above the sun formed a mysterious and profound shape. It seemed as though the 108 crypts were faintly connected together, condensing the infinite sun, true fire, and the essence of the sun that the 108 crypts emitted, absorbing it, transforming it into some kind of unbelievable power, and filling it into the Lingxiao Palace. And the Lingxiao Palace was constantly emitting an awe-inspiring divine might. It enveloped the incomparably vast sun within it. Under this awe-inspiring divine might, the endless flame life that lived and moved on the surface of the entire sun underwent some kind of subtle change. It was as though there was already some kind of ruler above their heads, controlling everything, allowing their lives to have some kind of order, no longer as messy and disorderly as before. Luo Fan looked at the palace. Without thinking, he knew that the palace was refined by Luo Fu. The way of heaven is mysterious. I did not expect it to be reflected in this way. Such a thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind, and his mood became slightly complicated. With his cultivation level, plus the legends he heard in the future, or on Earth in another time and space, he naturally knew what this situation represented. Luckily, this situation wasn't a bad thing. Therefore, though he exclaimed about the mysteriousness of the way of heaven, he didn't have any thoughts of changing it. In the future, I will plan well. I will let him reap the benefits and avoid the disadvantages. As he thought about that, the light in his eyes shot forward again. He suddenly broke through the defense of the Lingxiao Palace and entered the interior of the Lingxiao Palace. Looking at it like that, he couldn't help but nod. The situation inside the Lingxiao Palace was hundreds of times better than what he had expected. Luo Fan originally thought that Luo Fu's Lingxiao Palace and Guangpu's Moon Palace were similar in nature, so the interior shouldn't be much different. But in reality, the interior of the Lingxiao Palace was hundreds of times better than Guangpu's Moon Palace. Its area was 100,000 miles wide, and it was much wider than the Moon Palace. After the energy inside was changed, it had become extremely dense, chaotic energy. The density was much denser than that of the Moon Palace. Just these 2 points were enough to show that the Lingxiao Palace had countless benefits for cultivation. However, more importantly, what surprised Luo Fan the most was the flow of time in the Lingxiao Palace. The flow of time in the Lingxiao Palace was 100 times faster than that of the primordial world. Compared to the Moon Palace, it was 100 times faster. After praising for a while, Luo Fan came back to his senses and understood why such a situation would occur. Luo Fu had just attained the earthly immortal Dao fruit, and his cultivation realm was much lower than Guangpu's. Although the difference between his strength and Guangpu's was much smaller because of his solid foundation and the large amount of energy he had accumulated, there was still a difference. Under such circumstances, Luo Fu was able to distort the flow of time, but Guangpu was unable to. This seemed unbelievable, but in reality, it was only natural. After all, Luo Fu had the water domain and the countless divine ability techniques that Luo Fan had imparted to him before the Tribulation Transcendence. After Luo Fan's guidance, he was already able to fully unleash the power of the water elemental domain and was able to use it to distort the flow of time. Although there weren't any divine ability techniques that could directly change the flow of time among the countless divine ability techniques that Luo Fan had taught him, there were still many related profound principles contained within them. Chapter 364. In these 36 years, Luo Fu, Guangpu, and Luo Chunyang's family of 3 had lived for more than 2,000 years. Although this period of time was not long, it was enough for the family of 3 to enjoy enough family happiness. Just as Luo Fan was checking, Luo Fu and Guangpu were giving advice to Luo Chunyang, urging him to cultivate well. They continuously imparted their own cultivation experience to Luo Chunyang, hoping that he could break through the deity reversion realm and enter the adversity passing realm in the shortest time possible. In this, the one who helped Luo Chunyang the most was not Guangpu, who had a higher cultivation level, but Luo Fu. The reason was very simple. After all, Luo Fu also cultivated the deity reversion realm. Like Luo Chunyang, they both started cultivating as post-celestial life forms. In the end, they spent a huge amount of time and endless energy to obtain their current cultivation level. The bottleneck that Luo Chunyang was facing now, Luo Fu had also encountered in the past. As someone who had experienced it, the help to Luo Chunyang was naturally much greater than that of Guangpu, who only had a higher cultivation level. At this moment, Luo Fu and Guangpu suddenly had a sudden impulse at the same time. They looked at each other, and a calm and indifferent smile appeared in their eyes. "It seems like it's time, senior brother." Guangpu smiled. "It's about time." Luo Fu also smiled. "Dad, Mom, what's going on?" Luo Chunyang asked curiously as he listened from the side. As soon as he asked this, a look of realization appeared on his face. When he spoke, he had already calculated the time and thought of what was going on. He hurriedly said, "So it's because Dad and Mom's wedding day has arrived. Congratulations, Dad and Mom." Luo Fu and Guangpu looked at each other and smiled, saying, "As long as you don't mind. At this moment, your grandfather has already sent me a message. In a few days, it will be the wedding day of your mother and I. During this period of time, I won't be able to guide you in your cultivation." Luo Chunyang chuckled and said, "Dad, Mom, don't worry and enjoy your newlyweds. I will naturally have my own cultivation." When Luo Fu and Guangpu heard this, they smiled and nodded. Luo Fan's eyes flickered with golden and silver light as he observed everything. A faint smile appeared on his face. He withdrew his gaze and stepped into the space-time illusion in the blink of an eye. Since he left the space-time illusion to refine the underworld, more than 2,000 years had passed in the space-time illusion. Throughout the years, the 100,000 innate gods selected by Immortal Tan Mu and the others in the space-time illusion had been cultivating on their own. They worked hard to control the jade pendant that Luo Fan had passed on to them. They worked hard to grasp the superpower that the jade pendant gave them. These innate gods were all shockingly talented. The jade pendant that Luo Fan used was extremely mysterious, so it wasn't too difficult to control. Therefore, after spending only 2,000 years, everyone had a deep understanding of the jade pendant in their hands. Although they couldn't perfectly control the power and divine power that the jade pendant gave them like they could control their own power, it wasn't much different. At least, they had reached the requirements to enter the internship stage. In addition, Immortal Tan Mu and the others had already grasped the 1,296 jade pendants. Although the number of jade pendants was more than 1,000 times that of other innate gods, Immortal Tan Mu and the others had already received many pointers from Luo Fan. Moreover, they had seen the divine power of the jade pendant before everyone else. Hence, it was much easier for them to control it compared to other innate gods. It wasn't impossible for them to have a rough understanding of the jade pendant that was more than 1,000 times more than other innate gods in the same amount of time as other innate gods. Although the degree of control was still far from that of other innate gods, Luo Fan didn't have any intention of hiding his arrival. The space-time illusion was refined by him, so it had an extremely close connection with him. With his arrival, the space-time illusion underwent a drastic change. In the blink of an eye, heaven and earth shook, the wind blew, and the clouds moved. The heaven and earth shrank slightly, as if it was breathing with Luo Fan's breath and changing with his mood. With the appearance of such a mysterious change, the innate gods who had lived in the space-time illusion for tens of thousands of years naturally noticed it. In an instant, almost all the innate gods felt the arrival of Luo Fan. As they sensed it, Luo Fan also felt it. With a smile, he took a step forward and arrived above the void. Then, he condensed a magic cloud with a radius of 10,000 miles. With the appearance of this magic cloud, tens of thousands of flying lights shot up from the ground and landed on the magic cloud one after another. It was Immortal Tan Mu and the other 100,000 innate gods. As soon as Luo Fan saw them, he knew that they were a little anxious from waiting. They couldn't wait to go to the place where they were guarding and combine the jade pendant with the area so that they could have the ability to know everything within a radius of 12 trillion miles. That was why he was in such a hurry. Seeing this, Luo Fan didn't hesitate and said with a slight smile, "Finally, I didn't disappoint you. Everything has been arranged within the agreed time. At this time, you only need to go to your respective areas and activate this technique. Then, you'll be able to know all the movements within the area, and you'll be able to contact other fellow cultivators without any time difference." Hearing Luo Fan's words, everyone exclaimed out loud. Obviously, such a change had far exceeded the limit of their imagination. For a moment, they didn't know how to react. Naturally, Luo Fan didn't care about them. With a point of his finger, a spiritual light rushed out from his hand and shook in the void, condensing into a large number of complicated and mysterious words and patterns. There weren't many words and patterns, only tens of thousands of words. However, they contained a rather complicated principle of power operation. It seemed to be able to condense some kind of mysterious existence in the mind of a cultivator. This kind of existence could connect with an even more mysterious existence in the unseen world and exchange certain things. The innate gods were all people with amazing talent. Although the cultivation methods they cultivated were different, and their cultivation systems were different from Luo Fan's Dao Fruit Great Path. However, they were able to easily see through the profundities of this magic art the moment they saw it. In an instant, they roughly understood this art. Daoist, Sandalwood, and a few others with profound cultivation bases had even cultivated it directly, condensing it into a mysterious mark in their mind and will. So that's how it is. It's actually so mysterious. Immortal Tan Mu couldn't help but sigh. Through this mark, he felt as if he could instantly transmit his thoughts to every inch of space in the untainted land, and he could also receive information from every inch of space in the untainted land. At this moment, he could even faintly feel the soul sense of several innate gods around him. He even had a feeling that as long as he thought about it, those innate gods could know what he was thinking. As long as those innate gods thought about it, he could also know what they were thinking. The fact that the principles contained in this kind of magic were very profound was secondary. For him, What made him admire even more was the bold ideas revealed in this magic. However, as long as he thought that this incredible and mysterious magic was created by Luo Fan, he also felt that it was natural. Therefore, he only sighed with emotion. He didn't feel that it was incredible, and he didn't directly praise Luo Fan like before. During this period of time, more and more innate gods continued to cultivate this incantation, condensing one inexplicable mark after another in their mind and psyche. Although this mark was cultivated by the same magic art, the mark contained in the mind of each innate god was different from that of any other innate god. Although the essence was the same, each had its own characteristics, which were very mysterious. Luo Fan smiled slightly. He felt that when each innate god cultivated that magic art, the sky observation mirror seemed to be able to connect with one more node. These nodes were connected with each other through the sky observation mirror, which was like a personal computer and a server. The principle wasn't too complicated, but the divine ability contained within it was rather profound. Moreover, the train of thought required wasn't something that the innate gods that were born and raised in the primordial world could think of in a short period of time. 3 years. For many innate gods, this was a short period of time that was almost negligible. The number of nodes that the sky observation mirror could connect had increased to more than 100,000. In fact, all the innate gods who were present were connected together. It was obvious that all the innate gods had completely cultivated the cultivation art that Luo Fan had taught them. Seeing this, Luo Fan smiled slightly and said, "Since you have cultivated this magic art, you can go to your respective positions at any time. However, Fan has a presumptuous request. Taoist brother, you're treating us like outsiders. My kindness to you goes deep into the endless sea. It is not difficult to ask some questions. Taoist brother, you can say it." Taoist, Tenmu said on behalf of the innate gods. Luo Fan smiled and said, "It is not a big deal. It is just that my son and a female disciple of mine are about to get married. I just hope that you can attend the wedding." Wedding? Wedding? When the innate gods heard what Luo Fan said, they naturally knew that he was talking about Luo Fu and Guang Pu. However, they had no idea about the wedding. They only felt that these two terms were very strange, but they could not understand the mystery behind it. This was also natural. Among these innate gods, except for a few who had been invited by Luo Fan to enter the Void Wuji Palace's spirit space, almost none of the other innate gods had entered the spirit space. Naturally, they did not know about the customs of the secular world. Naturally, they did not know what the wedding was. However, although they did not know what it was, most of them felt very novel and curious when they heard this strange term. Obviously, they were looking forward to the wedding that was about to take place. Luo Fan had already expected this. Without any nonsense, he directly explained to everyone what the wedding represented and what preparations needed to be done. As he said this, even the innate gods who had no interest before became very interested. Immediately, they expressed to Luo Fan that they were willing to stay. Just when everyone expressed their opinions, the space-time illusion suddenly trembled slightly. Then, an aura that was much stronger than that of most of the innate gods present suddenly emerged in the space-time illusion out of thin air, covering a very wide area in the illusion. After this aura appeared, after a slight pause, it quickly approached the place where Luo Fan was. In the blink of an eye, it had already arrived on the auspicious cloud where Luo Fan was. It suddenly descended and turned into a familiar figure. It was Hong Jun. This was, of course, during the 3 years in the space-time illusion, which was also the dozens of days in the untainted world. Hong Jun had already flown a distance of 3 trillion miles and returned to Buzhou Mountain with his super-fast flying speed. After that, he naturally sensed the characteristics of the space-time illusion that Luo Fan had specially set up to make the space-time illusion extremely conspicuous. So he directly threw himself into the space-time illusion. At this time, the space-time illusion no longer had any defense, so it naturally did not cause any obstruction to him, allowing him to easily enter it. After sensing Luo Fan's aura, he quickly came over. Unfilial disciple, Hong Jun, greets master. May Master live forever and have infinite powers. Hong Jun saw that Luo Fan did not care that there were hundreds of thousands of people present. He did not care that his cultivation had reached the peak of the perfected immortal realm and almost surpassed all the innate gods present. He knelt on the ground and said excitedly. Hearing Hong Jun's words, Luo Fan smiled happily and said, "You don't have to be so polite. You're already a person who has established your own sect, so there's no need to be so polite. Master, you have given me a new life. Even if I've already established my own sect, I will not change in front of you." Hong Jun did not care and kowtowed. There was a lot of excitement in his words, and he was no longer calm and indifferent like before. Seeing this, Luo Fan smiled faintly. He raised his hand and waved gently, and there was a potential to lift Hong Jun up. He said, "I know your filial piety. Get up. Let me introduce you to a few Taoism friends." Hong Jun did not dare to resist Luo Fan. He stood up and said yes. At this time, Immortal Tan Mu and the others were already stunned. Although they knew that Luo Fan had a few disciples, they did not expect that there would be such a powerful existence among Luo Fan's disciples. Among the hundreds of thousands of people on the entire auspicious cloud, only Immortal Tan Mu had a little confidence to fight against Hong Jun. Except for him, the other innate gods felt that their strength was actually far inferior to Hong Jun's. They even felt that as long as Hong Jun moved his mind, they would completely lose any power to move. How could this not make them feel surprised and unbelievable? Therefore, when Luo Fan introduced Hong Jun to them, they all said that it was enough to associate with Hong Jun and did not dare to be his elder. Some innate gods even said on the spot that they did not dare to be the same generation as Hong Jun and were willing to be his elder. This was not because these innate gods flattered Hong Jun, but because of their concept. This concept was that the strong were respected and the weak were prey to the strong. Although there were many innate gods formed at the beginning of the untainted land, they were very sparsely distributed, and there was not much communication between them. Under such circumstances, it was naturally impossible for these innate gods to form a perfect social system. The way they measured whether the other party had a higher status than them was not by the relationship between them, but by the strength between them. Just like Immortal Tan Mu, although he did not have much contact with many innate gods, when he appeared, even if he just appeared, almost all the innate gods were still willing to give him face and support him when he made a decision. Under such a concept, how could they dare to treat Hong Jun, whose cultivation realm was much higher than theirs, as a junior? Luo Fan said it several times, but it did not work, so he no longer cared about them. The relationship was formed by the willingness of both parties. As for the attitude and relationship between each other, as long as both parties agreed, no one else could interfere. Since these innate gods were willing to lower their status, he naturally did not care about them. After all the innate gods introduced themselves and got to know each other, Luo Fan sent them away and asked them to go back and make all kinds of preparations, waiting for the wedding of Luo Fu and Guangpu. Immortal Tan Mu and others also knew that Luo Fan and Hong Jun had a lot to talk about, so they also left, leaving Luo Fan and Hong Jun on the auspicious cloud. Seeing that everyone had left, Luo Fan said to Hong Jun, "I have accepted a few more disciples in these years. As the eldest senior brother, you need to meet them." Hong Jun heard this and was overjoyed. "That's great. With a few more junior brothers and sisters, our sect can be carried forward." Luo Fan smiled and said, "To carry forward our sect, we need you, the eldest senior brother, to work harder. Your junior brothers and sisters are still quite weak, and they're still at the stage of consolidating the foundation." "I understand," Hong Jun said with a smile. Luo Fan nodded slightly. With a thought, he had already brought Hong Jun out of the time and space illusion. With another move, he brought Hong Jun to the Seeker Cave at the top of Buzhou Mountain. "After you, I have a few more disciples. You have already met Fu, and Pu. In addition, there's also your fourth junior brother Lin Tiannan, fifth junior brother Gu Ling, and sixth junior brother Lei Jiushao. Among them, Your fourth junior brother is leading the creatures from the small Kiliacosm to cultivate the formation in order to survive the great trial of heaven and earth. He has no time to attend the wedding, so you can't see him now. Your fifth junior brother is traveling in the untainted land and can't return to Bujo Mountain in a short time, so you can't see him now. Only your sixth junior brother Lei Jiu Shao is cultivating in my magic treasure, so you can see him now. Come with me, Luo Fan said with a smile.